Hello everyone and welcome into our latest live broadcast. Today it's the 22nd of February 2026. I'm CareyHolzman and today I'm going to talk to you about the common misconceptions on the internet today, how you will very rarely find the information I'm about to give you. This is rarely found on the internet, but if you want to do your research and history, you'll find that you can verify everything I'm telling you. That will explain how this information has become misconstrued over time, but is still embraced and held as true when it really isn't true anymore. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the difference in RAM, which is really expensive right now, and you probably don't need any more than you have. That's the first biggest shocker you're going to hear, and you're probably not going to hear it from anybody else but me, but as a technician working in this field professionally since 1991, RAM used to be very, very important to have a lot of it. But with the modern SSD, it sort of replaces the RAM. You don't need a lot of both unless, of course, you're an extreme power user, in which case, keep doing what you're doing. In front of me, I've set up just a basic motherboard here. I put one stick of RAM in there, and I've got a mechanical hard drive. Mechanical hard drives were our only choice back in the day. And when you would run low on RAM, just as you would today, your system doesn't just crash out of RAM. If you get an out of RAM error, that's not, it doesn't mean you're out of RAM. I know it's misunderstood. It's the engineers who write the code don't speak the same language you and I do. So there's something called a Windows heap. And if you exceed the heap, you might get an out of RAM error. And it's usually indicative of a system problem, a corrupted file, or some sort of a glitch where everything gets consumed until it crashes. So that has nothing to do with having more RAM. What we used to do back when I had my first home computer, first Windows compatible, IBM compatible home computer, I had a 286-12. I think it would boost to 16 on turbo. It had 4 megs of RAM. Now, these are back in the days of DOS, DOS 5, DOS 6. Those are much smaller applications than Windows, by far. Maybe 1/1000th, 1/100,000th of a size of application than what Windows is today. Much less complex, doesn't require as many resources, but 4 megs of RAM really wasn't enough resources to do certain things. So what would happen, and what still happens today, and this has always been the same, nothing has changed, is that when you run low on RAM, it creates pretend RAM on your hard drive. We call this virtual memory. It's not real. It's pretending to be RAM. But when the hard drives were so slow, your whole system would bog down whenever you needed more of this, and it would just emulate it over here. This is much, much faster. But when this came out, this and this is still faster, but it's not so obvious. So now when you run out of RAM, it's still creating pretend RAM over here, but this is anywhere from 10 to 30 times faster. 10 to 40? No, hold on a minute. Try and get the math right. If you had a Gen 5 drive running at 15,000 megabytes per second, 14,500. Let's do 14,000 to keep the math simple. And hard drives back then, especially back then, you get like 40. Today, you might get 180. Let's just round it up to 200. How many times does 200 go into 14,000? 280? No, it can't be right. 28? Think about this for a minute. So basically, 200 would be a very, very fast mechanical drive. So 200 goes into 1,000 5 times, and you got to multiply that times, let's say, 14. 14 times 5, 5 times 10 is 50, 5 times 4 is 20, 70. 70 times faster. So by simply leaving your RAM alone with whatever you have, any more investment of RAM, regardless if it's pennies on the dollar or if it's exceedingly expensive, for most of you, is a complete waste of money. You're just wasting it. You're flushing it down the toilet. You're not using it. It's not benefiting you. It's psychological. But it stems from the old days from these. Now, I want to give you a live example by leaving just the minimum amount of RAM in here. Right now, I think this is a 16 gig, but we could put an 8 gig stick. It doesn't matter. Once we fire this up and we see how long it takes to get to the desktop, then we'll disconnect this, and these are both cloned. I cloned these last night. So the same operating system, everything loads the same drivers, same everything. And then we'll load from this. And if you want to time it, feel free to time it. You can rewind this video live as it airs, or just pay attention because the difference is so obvious. Now we can run the same test, switching out the amount of RAM. We could double, triple, quadruple the amount of RAM. And what you'll probably find is the system actually slows down, especially during the first boot, because it has to train all that memory, and the more you have, the longer it takes. This reverses the common misconception online that adding more RAM is always more desirable, that your system will go faster. And that used to be true if you want to go back to 1995, 1991, if you want to go back prior to 2013, because around 2013 is when we started getting our first regular SATA SSDs. And those will initially ran at 150 megabytes a second with SATA 1, 300 with SATA 2, and then 600 with SATA 3, which the actual amount is like 550. But 550 is still a short throw from 14,000. But nonetheless, the point I'm trying to make is you reach a point of diminishing returns where the things we used to do are no longer necessary based on the modern technology. If you want to live in the past and you want to work on vintage computers, then your vintage ideology fits perfectly. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bring people up to speed. We have too many older people giving advice online that no longer applies today, and I don't want to be one of those people. I want to stay on top of the technology and embrace it and explain to you how this has changed. We don't defragment drives. You used to have to defragment these. You would never want to defragment one of these. What used to be true still holds true if you're still using this old stuff. It's slow, it's high maintenance, and it's unreliable. This is tiny, uses less power, is multiple times faster, and you're not compensating for where this is weak by adding more of this. If you have this, you don't need as much of this. The idea that a swap file should be 1.5 times the amount of RAM is the most illogical thing. Anybody who's a critical thinker would understand that the less RAM you have, the bigger the swap file you need. But if you're always going to take the amount of RAM that you have and multiply it 1.5 times as a general rule, what that means is the more RAM you have, the less dependent you are on a swap file. But yet, why are you continually making the swap file bigger and bigger and bigger when you should be making it smaller and smaller and smaller? In other words, if I have 4 gigs of RAM in here, then my dependency on a swap file 1.5 times isn't going to be enough. That won't be enough. Well, it might be, but generally speaking, that's best to let the system manage it. You shouldn't be modifying it. The system does a much better job than any human can do. I'm telling you, you can second guess the mathematics that's happening in the equations. You're going to screw up. You're not going to get it right. Let the system manage it. I promise you, your system is not giving you 1.5 times the amount of RAM you have as a swap file, because the more RAM you have, the less dependency you need on a swap file. The only time you need a swap file or virtual memory or paging memory is when you run out of RAM, and it just creates pretend RAM on the drive. That's your swap file. The more RAM you have, the less likely you need any pretend RAM. This isn't rocket science. So you're saying if you have 64 gigs of RAM, you would still multiply 1.5 times that for your swap file, when it should be, you could turn your swap file off altogether in most cases. That would actually speed your system up. That's why I say it's best to let the system manage it. But this misinformation continues because people who learned 25, 30 years ago are teaching other people online 3 decades old information. Now, I don't know about you, but I like to think that I have evolved and grown in the last 30 years. So for me to keep repeating 30-year-old information as though the world hasn't changed is oblivious to reality. And it's holding yourself in the past. You need to let it go. Unless you're working on old vintage equipment, that information does not apply to modern technology. It's like telling me I need to pump my brakes when it rains. Yeah, if you're driving a 1974 Ford Pinto, that's how you're going to stop. But if you're driving a modern day car, you're actually probably not going to stop very well. Today's modern cars, they have anti-lock brakes and computer systems that monitor the wheels. And if you just put your foot down on the brake and hold it there, you will come to a shorter stop safer. You don't pump your brakes anymore. People that worried about flooding the car by push down the gas pedal and adjust the choke to get the car to start on a cold morning, we don't do that anymore. Most of you would say, well, duh. Well, this is duh. How could you not? I know how you cannot know this. It's because the internet continues to tell people to adjust the choke and pump the brakes as the equivalent of telling people this false virtual memory size mathematics that doesn't work out in any form of logic if you just think about it, and why more RAM for most people is a complete waste of money. So it shouldn't matter to you that RAM is more money. They're doing you a favor from flushing your money down the toilet endlessly because you believe the nonsense that is propagated throughout the internet, so much so that this may be the first time you've ever heard anybody on the internet tell you this information. That's what I'm up against. But the math is there and the logic is there. And furthermore, you can test it for yourself. And rather than have you take my word for it, I'm just going to show you. We're live, unscripted, and unrehearsed. I have no control over the outcome of this. But it's so basic and it's so simple and it's so obvious if you understand what this is and what it does, and what this is and what it does, and what this is and what it does, you should be able to work out in your head just based on the numbers alone. And simple math. If this can do 200 megabytes a second and this can do 14,000 or even 7,000 or even 3,600 on a Gen 3, let's say 3,000. At 3,000 megabytes per second on an early generation NVMe drive, that's 15 times faster than this. Now, yes, this is still faster, but the difference between the speeds is not so extreme as it is between this and this. Okay, are you ready for today's show? Welcome in. I hope you're all having a great Sunday, and thank you to Mark Gaines and our friend Buster for their Amazon gift cards. They contributed prior to the show starting in lieu of a super chat. And we thank you very much for that and your support, and all our members here in green in the chat room. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. And I hope you walk away with evidence so you don't have to wonder what the truth is with regards to the subjects of hard drives versus solid state drives versus RAM, and why, if you have a lot of one, you don't need much of the other. And so to have a lot of both is really for your extremist, right? Somebody who can afford it, who's a very demanding user, probably wants a lot of storage and a lot of RAM, and they're going to spend a lot of money. Okay? No differently, if you go to a restaurant and you're a big eater, the bill for your food is going to be more than the bill for somebody who doesn't eat as much. That's all I'm trying to say. And if you're somebody that can have that kind of appetite, then that's right for you. But it's a complete waste of money for most people who wouldn't eat, the average person wouldn't eat that much, right? If we go to an extreme. So I'm not here to tell you how much you should be eating. I don't know what your appetite is, but I can tell you most people, the average person, this information's for them. All right, let me take a look in the chat and say hello to everybody. Sean Skinner says hello. Stephen Dutoit says hello and became a supporter. Thank you, Stephen. Isaiah says hello. There's Jonathan Fells and Bradley Pagliano saying hello. And Eugenio Dago, Gary Tatum, our friend Luke Greenia joining us from Vermont. There's Mark Baggett and Ben Laird. I also see a friend, Mark Gaines, Jim Kenny, Andy W6AD joining us here in the chat. Francisco Orna says hello. There's Paul Vircher and David Graham, Eddie Casanova, and Mortant saying hello. Welcome in, guys. Good to see everybody today. Dazzle555 says hello. And Amazing Air Show videos asking about SMR versus CMR. We'll talk about the shingled, shingled magnetic forget what it stands for. Remind me. Let me go through this example first, and we can talk about the difference in the drives. Let's see. Alan Lindos says hello. Ron Barnish joining us here in the chat. Bike Man says hello. Ricky B4 says, hey, I used to own a 70 Ford Pinto. And he lived to tell about it. That's pretty incredible. The Van Cleek just became a supporter. Right on. Thank you guys for supporting us. We don't have any sponsors here. You guys are our sponsors. So we thank you very much for enabling us to continue to do this full time rather than have to put this on the back burner and go get some more computer work that, you know, at the end of the day, we all have bills, and if I'm going to spend most of my time making videos, then I'm not making money otherwise without your support to pay the bills. So thank you for supporting me so I can continue to do what I love and hang out with people that I very much enjoy hanging out with, all of the friends here of the channel. And I would much rather be doing this, unfortunately, than fixing a customer's computer because of the stresses that are involved in that. But one way or the other, the bills got to get paid, and as long as I have your support, well, we'll keep doing this full time. I love it. Mark Leibowitz joins us from Chicago. He's a computer technician out of Chicago, saying hello. There's Neil Garrett saying he loves the auto mechanical metaphors. Yeah, well, it's the best I can come up with. I originally was going to be an auto mechanic, an ASE certified auto mechanic, before the whole computer thing took over, and things kind of flip-flopped. Computers used to be a hobby for me. Now cars are a hobby and computers are my career. Could not have seen that one coming. Phil Stodd says hello, and Roger Nyrod says hello. Andy Kane joining us. Mike Super saying hello, and Dom Parada also joining us. Steven says, Carey, I've been watching your channel for a number of years. The reason I'm not on your live streams is I live in South Africa and our time zones are very different. Well, I can understand that. And I appreciate you watching all the way from South Africa. That's really cool. Let's see, did I mention Dazzle555? Hello to you. Steelic wants to know what kind of keyboard this is. This is a Gravistar. Like the word gravity and the word star put together, Gravistar, and then just search for that and you'll find it. He says it's 10 o'clock at night there. Hey, that's no excuse. That's 10 o'clock at night or close to it there for all of our friends in Scotland, like Ben Laird, in Ireland, like Andy Kane. John Lewis joins us from Brazil. That's all right. I'm a night owl, so to me 10 o'clock at night that's still 5 hours away from my bedtime. But, you know, I also start my day later than most people, too. You can add 8 hours on for sleep, and you can pretty much figure out when I'm waking up. But that being said, we're glad to have you here. Thank you for joining membership and supporting us. And I love having a worldwide audience. It tickles me. You know, it's really cool in the era that I grew up that I can see the world where it's evolved to the point. Instead of $3 a minute for a long-distance phone call, you get to see me live in 4K and hear me. There's about a 30-second delay, I think, from when I talk to when you hear me. And it's all virtually, I'm going to say free, but you got to pay for your internet access and the cameras and the microphones and blah, 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 the lighting. But that's pennies compared to what it used to cost in the 80s or even in the 70s to make a long-distance phone call. Even within the same state that you lived in, a certain distance would be a long-distance call at a cheaper rate. But anyway, yeah, it tickles me. Love it. Mark's mentioning there in Chicago, it's 2:19. So Chicago's just an hour ahead. Central time. See, I'm from Michigan originally. That's where Eastern time starts. So I'm used to Illinois and Chicago being, or I'm sorry, Illinois and Michigan being on the same time zone, and they're not. I always forget that. I remember it when I drive, though, because when I drive, I start losing time going up to Michigan. And then, you know, just when you think you've adjusted to the couple-hour time difference, or right now, this time of year, it's just a 1 hour time difference. As soon as I cross the border into the state of Michigan, I've gained another hour. Or lost another hour, depending on how you see it. It's an hour later than Illinois, who's an hour later than Arizona. And then when daylight saving time hits, what is it, next month? Then it'll be a 2-hour difference in Illinois and a 3-hour difference on the East Coast, which Michigan is considered part of because it's on the Eastern time zone. Amazing Airshow video says, isn't adding memory in cases where the NVMe drive being used as a swap file better? Not so much in time, but in wear and tear on an NVMe storage drive where everything is saved. Have you ever seen a worn out NVMe drive? I've never seen one in my whole life. It's almost like, you want to talk about airline crashes. Have you ever been in an airline crash or known anybody personally who's been in an airline crash? I know they happen, but I don't know anybody personally. I've never seen one other than on television. If you're worried about something that's actually happened to you, let's talk about it. If you're worried about what you're seeing online, your mind is being poisoned. And the antidote for that poison is to understand that, let's say, for example, I have a gluten intolerance, and I'm making videos about how bad gluten is for me. I'm not talking about you. You could eat gluten all day long and be like, I don't know what the problem is. Or you could say, oh my gosh, this guy's having so many health issues with gluten, I better not eat gluten. When you never had a problem with gluten until your mind got poisoned with this toxic information, and then you took it upon yourself to become a victim. So if we have real world examples that you personally have experienced, I would love to discuss those. But if all you're dealing with is your imagination from what could be fictional information online, how do you know what you're reading is real or how prevalent it is? Just because it happened to somebody doesn't mean it's common, normal. A lot of things happen to people. People get struck by lightning. So do you worry about being struck by lightning? Do you know anybody who's been struck by lightning? Does it happen? Sure. Have you ever seen it? Do you know anybody who's ever been hit by lightning? And are you worried about what's going to happen if I go outside and lightning strikes me? I understand if it happened to you before and now you don't want it to happen again. But if it's never happened to you before, why in the world do you suddenly think now? It's like ignorance is bliss. When you didn't know about it, you never thought about it. Now that you know about it, you just think it's going to happen any day. What changed other than your perceptions? So again, we talk about real world experience that you yourself have experienced. I love to discuss that. I don't want to talk about what other people say online because you don't know that it's real. You don't know what their agenda is. They could be just yanking your chain because they think it's hilarious that you believe them. We used to do that in high school back in the 80s. We'd tell somebody the word gullible wasn't in the dictionary. I said, yes, it is. No, it isn't. Yes, it is. I'll prove it to you. And they'll go get a dictionary and look up the word gullible. And we just thought that was the funniest thing we ever saw. Do you want to be the guy with the dictionary being played and trolled? Because you might be if you believe this stuff. So just FYI. Best advice I can give you, you do you. Steelick said, don't NVMe's fail. Everything on this planet will fail. There's nothing on this planet that's here permanently, including the planet and the sun. Have you experienced an NVMe drive failure? That's my question for you. Ever in the whole history of your life, have you, and I'm talking to the person in the chat here, Steelick, have you, Steelick, experienced an NVMe drive failure? Andy says he hasn't worn out an NVMe drive yet. Neither of us. I don't know anybody that's ever worn out an NVMe drive. When an NVMe drive wears out, it becomes read-only. It doesn't fail. It just won't let you write any more to it. That's all. Have any of you ever experienced a solid-state drive, a flash drive, or an NVMe drive where you can read everything off of it, but you can't put anything else on it? It won't let you change anything? That's what an NVMe drive when it wears out. When a hard drive wears out, it fails. This is far more fragile, slower, It's all mechanical, like a needle on a record. It's very easily damaged. This is solid state. I can chuck this across the room. It's not going to hurt it. So this is superior. Do you think the technology of 30 years ago is really a fair comparison to today's technology? Can you think of anything in their world where the technology 30 years ago is better than today? Whether it's efficiency, price, overall length of ownership before you have a problem, like faucets don't leak like they used to, and plumbing doesn't rust like it used to. We don't use clay pipes anymore.
No.
Oh, and Mara says we've got an email. And the cat has decided to come out of hiding. Anyway, you can choose to believe whatever you want. I don't care what you believe. But I can't understand why people would voluntarily choose to carry around anxiety over imaginary problems they've never experienced, thinking that they're avoiding the problem that's never happened before they were trying to avoid it. It wasn't happening anyway. So you're not reacting to anything in reality. You're reacting to information online, which, you're free to do it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you what to do. I don't think it's mentally healthy. It's not productive. Hey, Paul Vercher sends an Amazon gift card. Right on. Paul says, I hope you enjoyed the gift card. I'm enjoying the show. Well, right on. Thank you, Paul. All right. So, again, you can go through life believing all kinds of nonsense, but just stop and ask yourself. This is what I'm encouraging. Stop and ask yourself, what am I reacting to? Am I reacting to reality that actually exists? I know this drive is here. I can feel it and I can touch it. But somebody online can say, you're not actually holding a drive. That's not real, Carey. And I can choose to believe them. People can gaslight you all day long. If you want to be gaslit, there's plenty of people that really enjoy doing that. And some people who are mentally unwell who don't even realize they're doing it. So it's your job to be your own vaccination. All right, you're your own antidote to this problem. Stop believing nonsense. Let's talk about what you know from experience. So if somebody says these fail all the time, show me one. Before you choose to believe what that person says, show me. Because here's what I'm going to do today. I'm not asking you to take my word for anything. That's why I love doing these videos. Because the internet used to be a place where people would write messages back and forth and they'd start arguments. And I said, man, I would love to make a video to show people with video evidence. You can't argue with it. I've got evidence, right? And that started with me using a leaf blower to blow the dust out of computers. And people said, oh, you're going to burn out the fans and the bearings in your fans. And the fans, when they spin, they generate electricity that feeds back into your motherboard. So you should at least put toothpicks or prevent the fans from spinning. These people are all imaginative doomsayers. None of that is true. Nothing of what they're saying is true. They clearly don't understand the way modern fans are made. They clearly don't know what a diode is and how it prevents electricity from flowing back to the board. And they clearly don't understand how little power a fan can generate. Have you seen a wind farm, those giant turning windmills that generate electricity? Have you seen how big each one of those blades are? I've seen them on the freeway, one blade at a time being hauled by an 18-wheel truck, and it's hanging off the back of the truck. One blade at a time they have to haul those. They're massive. And do you know how little power each one of those wind turbines makes? That's why you see a field of them. So you're going to tell me this little tiny fan here, I'm going to wear the bearing out. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. So I make videos, and if you go back in my channel, you'll see videos from 2008 to prove to people this isn't how this works. And for the most part, it shut it down. But some people won't accept reality. And they'll just make up stuff just because they have nothing else better to do and they find some sort of weird enjoyment. It's a form of trolling. So once I've got video evidence, if you want to come at me and tell me I'm wrong, show me your video evidence. Not a single person ever, never, ever has countered that video with one showing me a leaf blower causing damage. Never, not once. That was 2008. We're in 2026. I blow out customers' computers with a leaf blower because it's better for the environment. It's cheaper than the can of chemical, you know, the canned air stuff. It's less dangerous than using an air compressor because those can build up condensation, and you could be spraying water on the board. And sometimes if you don't know really how to adjust the pressure, you could cause damage to the board if you've got it up to like 250 PSI or something. But the point is, I'm held accountable for my clients. I'm not some home user reading the internet, just choosing to believe and take sides and stick my heels in and pick what side of a war I'm on. I'm in the battle, and I'm coming back from the battle, from the front lines, and I'm telling you what's happening there as a service to you. Now, if you have different footage than me of the front lines, I need you to show it to me, because otherwise you're just full of crap. And I need you to adopt that. If you want to sift through the nonsense online, you need evidence. So the evidence can be provided several ways. It could be provided from a trusted resource like a college, a university. If somebody's saying something about Windows, it's probably not true unless they're quoting Microsoft. If it's not coming from Microsoft, it's not true. Until I see it from Microsoft, or until I experience myself, it's not. It's just gossip and nonsense. People misunderstanding, miscomprehending, and then vomiting that out to the internet as though it were fact. And then people watch that and they believe it. You've got to consider the source of information, your own personal experience, and being able that if it really matters to you, try and replicate. Try and, if you really want to see a bad NVMe drive, try and make yours go bad. Intentionally do the opposite of everybody's warning you about to verify that what they're saying is true. Let me know how long it takes. It is so preposterous. If you want to be on a plane that crashes, fly in every freaking plane you can for the rest of your life until you finally get on one that crashes. You think it'll ever happen in your lifetime? Just as much as you can. Fly, 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 fly. There's pilots that live their whole friggin' careers and retire doing nothing but flying planes, and often they love flying planes so much that even in their retirement they like to fly for fun. And they die of natural causes, not a plane crash. So even if you tried to make one of these fail, you'd have a hell of a time. It's doable. It depends how dead set you are. You can absolutely put one of these into read-only mode by wearing out the write cells. I wonder how long it would take you if you intentionally tried. And if you do, please film it and share the video with us. All right. Now, these do fail for other reasons. You know, you can have controllers fail. You could have heat problems. You could have power spikes. You could have viruses. You could have ransomware. You could have corruption. There's lots of reasons. You still need a backup, right? But it's not as though this will probably outlive you. This won't. This will probably live longer than you will, but you won't know that because you will have gotten rid of it because its capacity is too small and the data transfer is too slow. Data transfer is way too slow. We didn't think that 30 years ago. We were very happy with the data transfer. But programs got bigger, more resource intensive, require more resources from the CPU, from the chipset, from the controllers. They need more. They got hungrier. They got bigger and more gluttonous. And as a result, these really don't keep up very well. So again, enough talk. How about I do this? Let's do something a little different today. I'm going to mute my microphone, and I want you to come to your own conclusions. I don't want to guide you. I want you to figure it out on your own. If you can't see how obvious this is, there's nothing more I can do. Let me plug in our power supply. We've got video, I've got internet. I need the keyboard and mouse are plugged in here, so let's turn those on. I really shouldn't set this on top. I have fans here and I'm kind of blocking them, but I'm pretty rough with my equipment. This is stuff, it's not delicate. I don't know why people treat it like it's porcelain, but to each their own. Let's go over here. We'll plug this in here. Power switch on. Turn this on. Okay, so we got that going over here. And then we're going to switch over to HDMI port 3. And I'll put myself down in a corner. And right now we're hooked up with just this. This is a 2 terabyte Seagate. It's a modern 2 terabyte desktop drive. Let's see how long it takes us before we get to the desktop. I wanted to move the camera out of the way so we can see when the taskbar loads. We're still not loaded yet. Now I'm muted. Now I think we're loaded. Okay, so without doing anything else, well, there comes the cat. Meow. Can I help you? Do you need some help? Cat's like, wow, that took a long time. One of my lives already passed. All right, so what I'm going to do is shut it down. Wrong mouse, Carey. Let me grab this mouse over here. And once again, if you want to look, I'm clicking, nothing's happening. Finally, it came. Now it's still loading something. Okay. Now maybe I can shut it down. You see how laggy the system is? Are you seeing that firsthand? We're going to wait for this. When this light turns off, we'll know it's powered off. The fan will stop. The lights will go out here. Okay, it's turned off. Now, there are some questions as to, what's the SSD we're using, what's the hard drive we're using. As you can see, this is a SATA-based hard drive. It's a Seagate. I'll get into all of this here in just a moment. What I want to do right now is show you I'm disconnecting this entirely from the system. You don't even want this plugged into your system, because whether or not you're writing data to it doesn't matter. The system's always polling it, and it's always slow to return the request. The computer's going, "You still there?" And it says, "Yes, I am." "Are you still there?" "Yes, I am." This is constantly happening about every 30 seconds. So by leaving one of these mechanicals installed inside of your computer, you slowed your computer down. You want to hook one of these up, use USB. Your USB ports are anywhere from USB 2 being 2.5 times faster than this drive to USB 3 and above being multiples faster. So it's not doing you any favors having this in your computer. And at least you have the option of unplugging the USB when system performance is important to you. Get this disconnected. Your system will run faster under heavy resource loads. Don't take my word for it. Test it. You'll also be generating a lot less heat and noise inside of your case. There's no reason in my mind that I would take a Ferrari and then bog it down with some bad gas from 1997. It's not going to run well. So yes, it'll run. It's not going to run well. USB is much faster than a hard drive. There's no reason to have internal hard drives anymore, unless you have a NAS or something like that. That's another discussion. Let's stay on path here. So now I'm going to grab this NVMe drive right here. This is an exact clone. There's no difference in the data. Every bit and byte between these two drives are identical. I just did it last night, so nothing has changed. And then I'm going to open up. I'm going to need some glasses. I don't know how well I can show this to you, but I'm going to open up the top NVMe slot here. We're going to put this in. Oh, I got to take the screw out. No cables or wires to hook up, no management to do, no space in the case needed. It's right on the board that it goes. Pop that in there. Put the screw down, secure that in place. Don't over tighten, just make it snug. Put the heatsink on. Okay, so what I want you to pay particular attention to, it doesn't really matter what CPU or what RAM we have. I haven't changed anything other than disconnecting this and plugging in the NVMe. Now we'll turn the power supply back on, and we'll turn the system back on, and then I'll minimize myself here. Okay, there it goes. Take camera 1, put it down here. Okay, let's see what our boot up time is this time. Not changing anything in the BIOS. I haven't made any changes to the system. You think more RAM would have made this better? Do you still believe that? Did you blink? Did you miss it? Okay, I don't make this up. You can verify if you really care that much. if you're that skeptical that what I am telling you is false, I encourage you to have your own experience before you decide if I'm wrong or not. If it matters to you that much, this is an easy thing you can duplicate and you will know the truth. Regardless of what anybody on the internet says, until you have your own experience, you're just choosing to believe whatever you want to. Wherever your personal bias is, when you're done being biased and you actually want to know the evidence, go get your evidence. Don't take my evidence. Don't take anybody else's evidence. Go get your own. And then you'll finally understand. If you're not willing to do it, then you're just purposefully choosing to ignore reality, which is your right. But when other people choose to ignore reality, you don't have to believe them. Okay, so what are the specs on this anyway? What are we using here? So let's go through that real quick, because I know you guys have some questions about what the system is. So let me go back full screen. No, I don't want to go there. I want to go here. And let's go to right click and system. So we're looking at, I can't see that. Hold on a minute. We've got a Ryzen 5 9600X. That's a pretty nice CPU. That one stick of RAM is 16 gigs. I could throw 8 gigs in it. You're not going to see any difference. And then we have Windows 11 Pro, 25H2, you know, latest updates. The storage drive that we've got in there, if I go to the C drive, right click and go to properties. Both the mechanical drive is 2 terabytes and the SSD are 2 terabytes. They're both the same capacity. And this is a Crucial Technology T500 is what it looks like. So, numbers on Crystal Disk Mark on this drive. Looks like it's Gen 4, 7421. And if you're curious about the details on the drive I was just showing you, this isn't like I pulled a drive from 1993. This is a fairly modern, it's kind of a few years old, but not, I mean, there's probably plenty of these in use today from people who don't know any better. If my camera will focus. And there should be a build date, maybe, I don't know. I usually put a date of manufacture on these. Let me see if I can put my more powerful magnifying readers on, my cheaters as they call them. See if there's a date on here. I don't see a date. Oh, here, date of manufacture. This is August of 2015. This drive, I thought it was about 6 years old. It's closer to about 11 years old. However, drive technology is really more, hard drive, mechanical drive is more about capacity. With that added capacity, it gets a little bit more speed, but it's not very much. So this one may only be doing like 100 megabytes per second, and a modern one maybe twice as fast at 200 if you go to the extreme opposite end of a modern drive of a larger, you know, say a 20 terabyte or larger capacity. So if that were true, then that boot up time, the initial one that we waited on all that time, cut that time in half. You're still waiting a long time. So again, I would encourage you to do your own testing if you're skeptical. That's the only way you're going to know the truth. Best I can do is save you from having to do that by showing you live, unrehearsed, and unscripted. And if you just don't believe what you saw is real, there's a solution for that. Do your own test. And if you get significantly different results, film it and share it with us. I want to see evidence that what you're getting is different. So with that, there are different kinds of hard drives. We talk about SMR versus CMR drives, and what is it? Shingled magnetic. Let me Google it. There's conventional magnetic recording, which is CMR, and it uses parallel tracks for faster, reliable, sustained writing. That's what you want if you're using a NAS or a RAID. There's shingled magnetic recording, which overlaps the tracks like shingles on a roof. They slightly overlap each other. And you can get more capacity, right? If you want to get 20 to 25% more storage in the same space, you can just overlap a little bit of the data like a shingle on a roof of a house. The problem with that is it takes longer to write the data because of the way it's shingled. You can't just blindly write. You have to preserve what's there while overwriting just a portion of it, so it overlaps a little bit. And then, of course, while it's scouring the drive, pulling data, that latency also goes up. So when we talk about backups, not NAS, but proper backups and what we call cold storage, something you're going to make a copy of and put away for a long time, you're not accessing it every day, it's far more cost effective to use SMR drives. But you don't want to use an SMR drive in a NAS. Absolutely do not do that. Were hard drives always CMR? I don't know. Let me ask. I imagine the technology must have changed in the last 30 years from what it used to be. Historically, all drives used parallel recording methods, but as manufacturers pushed for higher capacities, they introduced SMR, which we just talked about, for lower cost and higher capacity. Before SMR, it was called perpendicular magnetic recording, PMR. I think PMR and CMR are very similar. One's like a natural evolution. SMR is a completely different way of, you never could overlap data in the past. You were overwriting data, but you could never overlap it. And SMR is pretty interesting that they were able to, the engineers were able to innovate in such a novel way to, we have a limited amount of space here inside this drive. So how can we increase its capacity without increasing its physical size? And along comes SMR and does that. But it does come at a cost of latency and a cost of write speed. And on the other hand, it saves you money for the amount of capacity you're buying compared to a traditional drive. So what you're not paying for in money, you're paying for in latency and slowness on these SMR drives. And SMR drives are not meant to be used like heavy-duty, high-cycle use. So your failure rate, if you were to use one in a way it wasn't intended, would likely be higher than a CMR drive. But you did get more capacity for the money. Now, the question that I've discussed to many of you before is, would you, for the same amount of money, let's just say I have a Generation 3 2 terabyte drive for $100. I have a Generation 4 1 terabyte SSD, same exact thing, just Generation 3, Generation 4, same capacity, but it's twice as fast. And let's say that's another $100. So $100, $200. We go to Generation 5 terabyte NVMe SSD, exactly the same warranty, everything's the same capacity, but now we've doubled the speed again, which is about 4 times faster than the original Gen 3, and we double the price. So we go from $100 to $200 to $300. All the drives have the same capacity, and the only difference is the speed at which they read and write. What would you rather have? Would you rather have the $100 drive that runs at 3,500 megabytes per second, the $200 drive or that runs at 7,400 megabytes a second, or the $300 drive that writes at 14,500 megabytes per second? And that's the only difference between them. The capacities are the same, the install's the same, everything's the same. For me personally, I want the capacity. That's why I use a NAS. My NAS can't transfer data anywhere near the speed of an old Gen 3 NVMe drive. It's at least 15 times slower than that. But that's my personal preference. I will take capacity over speed any day of the week. But it also depends on what I'm using it for. So my NAS can be used as all these videos that I make here on YouTube. They need to go somewhere when I'm done. And these videos in 4K running 2 to 3 hours long, pretty large files. And I will run out of the space on this NVMe drive in 2 months. That's a 2 terabyte drive. I will fill that in 2 months. So about every 30 days, every 6 weeks, I take everything off of there and I move it to the NAS. The NAS has 100 terabytes available. I think a lot of people, and again, I'm not pointing fingers, I just think a lot of home users are downloading illegally off the internet games and movies, and they want a place to store it. And they're spending more money to store those games and movies than if they would have just bought them. Like if they're hoarding, it just doesn't make any sense anymore. And you know, what you do is your business, but when anybody says they have large capacity needs, I need to know, in order to help you solve your problem, what are we storing? And that's usually where people get real quiet. They won't tell me what they're storing. I go, well, you know, depending on what you're storing, there may be a more efficient way to do it. But if you're not going to come clean with me on what you're doing, I'm trying to understand how in the world would you get that much data? What are you creating yourself? I'm creating videos here on YouTube that are sizable. Maybe you're a photographer. I'm not saying there's not legitimate ways to do it, but they're not the way an average person uses their computer. The average person, in my experience, a home user, frequently downloads things illegally. And then they want to take what they've stolen and they don't want anybody to steal it from them. How can I make sure that this thing I've stolen stays in my possession? I better back it up. I'm not saying any of you are doing that. But I am saying it's pretty rampant, regardless of what justification. I don't care, right? It's fine. You do. I'm not judging you. I'm just trying to understand why would you need that much storage space? Help me understand. Could be a very good reason. But it may be the way that you're backing it up or what you're backing up is unnecessary. And until I understand, how is it possible you have this much data? Because in most cases, nobody needs a drive that goes 14,500 megabytes a second. You can't get the data on this computer at that speed. You can't get it off of the computer through any port at that speed. You can only use the 14,500 with the data on the drive in the machine that it's plugged into within the machine itself. You cannot take it out at that speed. You cannot get it on there at that speed. So why does it not matter? Here's what I'm trying to figure out. Like I'm trying to solve a problem here. Why are you so obsessed with the speed of the drive? Where's the data coming from? And how frequently is this a pain in your butt? So when I copy the files, I'll give you an example. When I copy my video files that are, this video is recording on this machine while it's broadcasting. So if anything happens to the broadcast, if anything happens to the channel, I have a backup of all my videos. And I wait 4 to 6 weeks and I'm moving about a terabyte, let's say, of files. So those terabyte of files going over my wireless network to my NAS will move at about 253 megabytes a second. Not 1,000, not 3,000, not 14,500. 250, let's just say 250. Okay? So about every 4 to 6 weeks, I turn the machine on. I select everything in my video recording folder. I say, copy this to my NAS, and I hit paste, right? It says this is going to take an hour, whatever it's going to take, I don't know. 2 hours. Great. I can still continue to use the computer. I could still go live. I could still be recording another video. Nothing I'm doing has changed. Normally I do this off camera late at night, and I'll just think, I haven't done it in a while. I'll go ahead and offload, clear the space up, and I don't have to worry about it for another 4 to 6 weeks. I don't have a schedule. I just, whenever it feels right. And I set it to copy, and it'll give me an approximation. It might take 2 hours. So what if I could cut that to 1 hour? So what if I could cut it to 20 minutes? What do I care? It's not preventing me from using the computer. It's not preventing me from using the NAS. Normally, I do this when I'm just kind of bored. And I go, okay, yeah, What can I do? Oh, I haven't backed it up in a while. So I think I'll go ahead and clear some space on this drive and move it over to the NAS. And I tell it to paste. And I go about my day. What else did I have to do today? Well, I haven't gone to dinner yet. I need to go to the grocery store. I just turn the monitor off to not waste electricity. Go do what I need to do. And it might even be that I've forgotten it. And I might be laying in bed at 2:30 in the morning going, there's something I'm forgetting. Maybe it never even comes to me. Maybe the next morning I wake up, I come down to the studio and I see the computer's on. I go, oh, I forgot I was copying to the NAS. The computer's the most patient thing in the world. It doesn't care. It's not hurting anything letting it run. It's wasting electricity, but it's not hurting anybody. And so I realize, oh, I've forgotten this from yesterday. Man, that thing was done 12 hours ago, 10 hours ago. I completely forgot. Who cares? It's done. The whole process is done. I didn't have to stare at it. I didn't have to watch it or babysit it. Just walk away. Went on with my life to do the normal things I do anyway. Who cares if it took 20 minutes or it took 2 hours? I'm not doing it 6 times a day. It's once every 4 to 6 weeks. That's how long it takes me to build up that much data. So what are you doing that's building up so much data that you need these high capacity drives and fast transfer rates? Genuinely, I want to know. I can't imagine. I mean, there's probably people doing video editing, but maybe 1 or 2 out of the whole group that's joined us today. There may be some people that love photography and they just love to go out and shoot 1,000 photos and they want to come home and back those up. Great. Are you doing that every day? So anyway, I'm just trying to solve problems, man. But sometimes people get sort of hypnotized. They go into a trance and they see somebody make a video and showing how fast something is or how large something is. And without any logical reasoning, they just go, I have to have it. That's okay. It's okay. I just need to understand that, because what I'm trying to do is figure out how to save you money, save you frustration, keep your life simple. But if what you want is emotional, I'm not a psychiatrist, and I don't even think you necessarily need to see one. I just know I can't help you. That's what you're choosing to do. And it doesn't follow any logic. It's all based on emotion. You feel impulsive. You need to have something. You don't even know why you want it. Just because you want it. That's valid. And it helps if I know that. You say, look, honestly, I don't need this. I just want it. And if you can afford it, that's great. But when you see people getting caught up with the whole price of RAM and stuff, and it's like, who cares? You obviously have RAM now. Why is it the amount of RAM you had was fine, and now all of a sudden, because the price went up, now you don't have enough? What's going on in the minds of people? Maybe somebody can explain it to me, because the RAM isn't holding your system back. There may be some extreme use case scenarios that somebody says, I run this application, it's very resource intensive, and it runs a lot faster with more RAM. Well, if you're dealing at that level, if you refuse to smoke cheap cigars and all you want are the finest cigars, as long as you have the wallet to pay for it, who's complaining about the price? Because if you actually need it, the price doesn't matter. You understand? Nobody's saying you can't have RAM. Have as much RAM as you want. But do you need it? Because if you're just complaining about the price because it's not fulfilling a personal emotional need, I can't help you with that. It's just a lot cheaper for you to just get over it. It's like, it doesn't matter. The amount of RAM you have right now is doing you just fine. You don't need any more. You haven't needed any more. And stop believing all the nonsense online, and stop believing that it's not possible to get it. You can still get it. Well, I can't afford it. Well, I can't afford a Rolls Royce, so I don't have a Rolls Royce. Life is pretty simple. Nobody owes me a Rolls Royce. If I really, really, really needed a Rolls Royce, I'll find a way to get one. I promise you, the price isn't the thing holding me back. It's a very interesting psychological experiment. that if you take somebody and put them in a classroom to learn another language, they may struggle for years, and when they're graduated, that class, still aren't very fluent in that foreign language. But if you blindfold them and parachute them out of a plane into a foreign country where they don't speak the language, I'll bet you they'll be speaking that language within 3 to 4 weeks. They'll have at least the same level of knowledge in the 3 to 4 weeks of the ability to communicate as they did in the classroom for 2 or 3 years. You see, necessity and need can make you do things and capable of doing things because you have to. You won't feel like I can never learn to speak the language until I sign up for school. You need to eat. You need to use a bathroom. You need to be able to communicate, and you will find a way, and you will learn that language quick because your survival depends on it. And it's amazing what a human being can do when they have no choice. So there's those who want, and there's those who need. And those who need will always find a way. And it's not about the price that's holding them back. It's up here that's holding you back. And so the question is differentiating a want and a need. How do I know if I want it versus I need it? Well, do you have it? Nope. Then you don't need it. Because if you needed it, you'd find a way. That's it. I'm not talking about a kidney, okay? I'm talking about materialistic consumer goods. If you're using your computer at such a high level, you must make some good money. And if you're using that computer to make money, the more you invest in it, the more money you could make. If I drive a car for Uber and I have a basic car, I only get paid a basic amount of money. The nicer my car is, the more it costs me for that car, but the more I get paid for driving that car. If I have a limousine, then instead of seating 2 or 3 people, now I can seat 12 people. I can make 12 times the amount of money on the same trip. Do you want a limousine? Do you need a limousine? Because if you're using it to earn money, why wouldn't you want to make 12 times the same amount, 12 times the current amount of money to basically do the same trips? If you're picking somebody up at the airport in a taxi, or you're picking them up in an Uber, or you're picking them up in a limo, there's 3 different prices. And the driver of the limo makes more than the driver of the taxi or the driver of the Uber. Period. So it might make sense for you to buy a limo as an investment to your own career. But to just have a limo because you want one, that's a luxury, emotional. If you can afford it, knock yourself out. Nothing wrong with that. But if you can't afford it, don't whine and cry like you're being left out. We're all being left out, and somehow we all get along just fine without it. We're living in a world of such demands and gluttony that, God forbid, somebody doesn't get something, they throw a tantrum like a child. I want that useless piece of plastic, as Dana Carvey would say. Buy me that useless piece of plastic. Man, if that's what gets you things, but when you're willing to put the work and make the sacrifice, there's no limits to what you can own. And if it really means a lot to you, you'll find a way. And if you're using it to earn a living, you'll do it because you have to and you don't have a choice. That's all I'm trying to say. This whole idea that people think they need more RAM all of a sudden makes me wonder, how have they been getting along this whole time? This whole time! And they woke up one morning and saw RAM prices were high and said, damn it, I was going to buy RAM. You probably don't need it. If you needed it, you would have already bought it. All right. So one of the other common things, am I being mean? Somebody says I'm being mean. What do I care if somebody wants 64 gigs of RAM? Oh, no. No, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. And if I'm not clear, let me try harder. Somebody can want whatever they want. I don't care. But when they go on the internet and they whine as though they're a victim and the world isn't fair, are you new here? When was the world ever fair? And what you want versus what you need. If you're saying to me, I'm diabetic and I need insulin and I can't afford it, that is a legitimate thing to voice your concern about. I need to eat and I can't afford food. But I wanted red sneakers and I've got blue sneakers and now I'm going to cry on the internet about it. You see the difference, right? You see how annoying that is, where it's like a spoiled child crying and whining over something that doesn't matter. It only matters to them. It doesn't matter to anyone else. So guess what? It doesn't matter to me. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's not being mean. This is the world. You ever seen how wild animals, any other animal other than a human being, lives out in the safari in Africa? Have you seen a gazelle taken down by an alligator? Eaten while it's still alive and dying, torn apart because it was just slower than all the other gazelles? Do you live on the same planet? That's all I'm saying. So you're not going to get any sympathy, and nor should you, in my opinion, in my book, think that you're somehow victimized because you can't afford something. I could come up here every day and tell you how unfair it is that the price of a Rolls Royce is so expensive I can't afford it and it's not fair. At what point are you going to get sick of hearing it? Because it's one of the dumbest complaints in life. How tough is your life that that's your biggest problem, is you don't have a Rolls Royce? There's people out there with real problems that is so disrespectful to me. I don't even know what else to say. And I don't think it's being mean. It's just disgusting behavior from my perspective. But I'm not telling you how to behave. I'm warning you about witnessing it. You're going to see a lot of content about this, and I want you to realize what you're watching and then decide for yourself. That's what I want you to do. But what you do is entirely up to you. It makes no difference in my life. Dodging Guy wants to know if Microsoft got rid of the swap file or disk defrag first. Oh, no. Swap files are still in use today. They haven't gone away. Disk defrag is still in use today. People still use these, and disk defragging neither one of those have gone away. It's just that when you go to a solid state drive, defragging is not a when you buy an electric car, you're not going to put gasoline in it. But that doesn't mean that nobody uses gasoline. They still sell gasoline, right? So if this is a car, this needs defrag. Sorry, a petrol or a combustion engine, and the solid state drives an electric car. They're both cars. One's far more efficient and uses a different source of energy to propel it. Some people will load every piece of software on their system to modify their Windows installation. And those are the people that are a nightmare to try and help. They'll have BitTorrent on their system, and Lord only knows what they're using that for. They'll have third-party applications to change the start menu or change their font size, and you're just like, oh my gosh, do you ever not install? It's like a big toy. And then they have a problem, and you say, well, probably this is such a mess. It'd probably be faster to just wipe it and reinstall it than try and dig through this mess. And they go, but I've installed so much on there, I don't want to have to do that all over again. Well, guess what? Don't put it back on. You don't need those third-party utilities anymore. You absolutely don't need them. All you have to do is embrace the change the way the majority of Windows owners accept it the way it is, and customize it within the variables that Microsoft gives you. All you have to do is educate yourself. But people are like, no, I want it to look like Windows 3.1 because that's what I learned 30 years ago, and I don't want to learn anything new, and I want to handicap myself. Well, go right ahead, but I can't help you anymore because you're causing your own problems, and then you're telling me why you're doing it, but at the same time you're asking me for help. And I'm telling you, if you stop doing that nonsense and you learn to use the computer the way it's intended to be used now, not 30 years ago, you won't be so dependent on these crutches that the rest of us aren't using. But if you want to, go right ahead, but you'll have to find your help somewhere else. because you just did this to yourself, and you're just going to keep doing it to yourself. This cycle will never end until your behavior changes. So if that's how you want to behave, you have every right to behave that way. And I have every right to tell you that trying to help you is a waste of time, because you're just going to go from one problem to the next. It's never going to stop until you change. And if you're not willing to change, find another solution. You know, I got other things. You know, I want to get something done and be done with it. I don't want to have to keep revisiting the same problems over and over because a user keeps making the same bad judgments. There's nothing wrong with the computer. If you're downloading debloat utilities in Windows 11, I don't know what people are on. If you're disabling AI, why? It should have absolutely no impact on your performance. None. And if you can show me, I don't want to see your system resources. Look at how much system resources. That's what they're there for. They're being used the way they're intended to be used. But if you can demonstrate to me a problem with your computer that you resolved by removing Windows bloat, please make a video and share it with us. Because there's something you are missing. You're solving a problem that you're having, and the problem could have been solved a completely different way. So the people who do this aren't considering other ways. They think that's the only way. And what happens over the long term is when people modify their installer or they modify the baseline of Microsoft Windows, as Windows updates and program updates come out over time, one of the things you just voluntarily removed by outsmarting Microsoft is going to result in an update not working for you. Why do all my updates, pretty much they always work? Not only for me, but every client. When have you ever seen an update fail here? But if you want to modify, if you think you're smarter than everybody else, or you want to believe some content creator who made a utility, and you wish to take that risk, especially with a free piece of software, you're going to have problems at some point. Now, I can't prevent problems 100%, but I can certainly exercise best practices to leave things alone unless we have a reason to change them. So if there's a reason to change them, we make sure that we're not changing something that 6 months or 12 months from now could come back at us by following the guidance of Microsoft with regards to what's allowed to be changed. But more often than not, people they think they're outsmarting Microsoft, and it's just complete ignorance of reality. They don't understand how one thing is connected to the other. And by removing this one thing, you've broken a connection over here that you're not aware of for 6 or 12 months. And then when this update comes in that breaks, they blame Microsoft for it when they're the ones who did it. Why do you think only a small amount of people are affected by Windows updates failing? Those are likely, the majority of that small amount are people who thought they were outsmarting Microsoft by putting on these free third-party utilities, you know, all this stuff. Instead of using everything you need to maintain Windows is built into Windows. And it's like, I don't like AI. Well, I don't like Chinese food. So guess what? I don't eat Chinese food. So don't use the AI. It's not hurting anything. What do you care? I don't like being spied on. Well, get offline. Don't go outside. There's cameras everywhere. Turn off your phone. It's tracking everything you do. Talk very quietly because people can overhear you. You want to live that life? Go live it. I'm not telling you not to. I encourage it. Go live out in the woods. Generate your own electricity. Have your own well. Be completely disconnected and lose all of the convenience. No, I want all the convenience, but without all the spying. It's not possible. You cannot have one without the other. It is not possible. It's like, I like the front of the coin, but I don't like the back of the coin. We'll get rid of the coin. No, I want the coin. Is it me or is that crazy? You decide for yourself. I laugh at it because it's absurdity at its highest point. All right. If you guys have questions for me, this will be a great time to ask. We're about an hour and 20 minutes into today's session. As I mentioned, there could be some speed benefits to adding RAM depending on if you're on the applications you're using. right? Maybe you're playing games. Those are expensive. Playing games is expensive. It means you have more time and more money than I do. I love to play games. If I could afford it and if I had the time, I would love to play games. But I also like to eat and pay the bills. So, you know what I mean? Call me jealous. I wish somebody else would pay my bills. And then I would just play games all day. What a great use for my valuable time here on the planet to contribute to society by selfishly engaging in a pretend land like I'm 12. That's fine. Nothing wrong with it. It's not right for me. I feel like my life should have more purpose. And you know, just because you're gaming doesn't mean that's all you do. There's nothing wrong with gaming from time to time. But that also means you've got the money for that. Video cards and games and the troubleshooting of getting the game to run. That doesn't pay my bills. If it did, I'd be doing it. I got nothing against it. You know what else doesn't pay my bills? You can use your imagination. So if I have to put money into something that isn't going to, you know, that significant amount of money, and all it's doing is creating debt and keeping me distracted, that's fine. If you go into the movies or something, entertainment's fine. But when you want to have your own game system and you want it to run 4K resolution and you want to play the latest AAA titles, it all adds up. We want fancy monitors and fancy speakers and fancy headset and a fast internet connection and an expensive router that's, you know, low latency and all this other stuff. Man, if you got the time and the money, have at it. And if it's something you only do 2 hours a day, but you can still make that kind of investment for just 2 hours a day, you are much, much better off financially than I am. That's all I'm trying to say. If that made me money, I'll be here talking about it all day. So if you want to know what it's like to be in this business and to be in computer repair, you're not going to be doing a lot with gaming systems, liquid coolers, RGB, or overclocking. No. Not generally. There's always exceptions, but generally that's a pretty tough niche to fill. Jim Kenny's talking, and when my main computer died, I needed a computer to research, slow or not. Yeah. You absolutely will get what you need. I promise you. Nobody's holding it back from you. Nobody's withholding anything from you. And you're just basically saying it. VX wants to know, Carey, I know you've answered this before. Your personal preference, would you buy AMD or Intel if you were buying a new PC for your own personal use? Well, I could do you one better. And I could say, you could ask me, what computers do I use for my personal use right now? Myself and Mara, you know, we have any Intel or AMD CPU we want. We have many of them here just sitting. And there's really nothing wrong with any of them. I think if I was wanting to play games, I'd probably focus more on AMD. Again, I'm in business and I'm here to share with you, not like the enthusiast channels. I'm here to show you the realities of being being in the computer repair or MSP business. For 35 years, I've been working pretty much every day, give or take, for 35 years. 1991 is when I professionally started, and by 1997, 96, I became self-employed. So I got my teeth cut in the corporate world, and I very much prefer to work with businesses than end users, because the end users are too fickle. They don't call often enough, and they want to take every minute of my time and then not pay me for it. Oftentimes, if you're going to have somebody not pay a bill, it's the end user, not the company. Companies have more problems more often and more at stake if the system goes down. They're losing money paying employees to work that can't work, and it's very critical, and you're not worried about spending a few $100 to get it fixed. For every minute it's down, they might be losing that much money. So it's a drop in the bucket. It's like being a fireman versus playing with matches. You can have fun playing with matches. Knock yourself out. I'm assuming you're being careful. You go buy the matches, you play with the matches, you burn up the matches, you play with some more matches. Or you can be a fireman. People's lives are in danger. Now, mine doesn't go that far. But in the case of a fireman, it is an emergency. Stop everything you're doing, get in the fire truck, and get over here right now. Every second longer it takes you, more of the building is burning down and lives are in danger. That's a significant amount of pressure. You can be a cab driver or you can be an ambulance driver. I mean, an ambulance is just a fancy cab, right? But tell me what the bill costs. Tell me which one is you think the ambulance driver is going to stop on their way to pick up some lunch? So what I'm saying is, I use, and again, we probably have 15 AMD and 15 Intel systems of varying degree. And for my personal use, Intel, Mars is Intel. And we're using that to create work. We're generating money from it. But if I'm using a computer to spend money because it's a hobby and it's a toy, then I would probably go with AMD because I'd probably get more toy for my money. It's more designed to be toy friendly than Intel is. So I don't have a single accountant, lawyer, dentist office. If you just go wherever you go for any services, professional services, the hospital, the doctor, the dentist, the lawyer, if you go in there and you just ask them, you see their computer, look at what it is. Oftentimes you can tell if it's Intel or AMD. Tell me what you see more of. But you go over to your friend's house, your cousin's house, your buddy's house, tell me if you see more Intel or AMD. So whether or not you're using it as a tool or you're using it as a toy, there's nothing wrong with having a toy. And there's nothing the AMD isn't going to do in the business environment that the Intel is doing. It's just that, at least for me, my clients, when I offer them AMD, because I don't personally care. You want an AMD? It doesn't build any differently. It doesn't really work any differently. I am happy to build whatever the customer desires. And my customers, all of them, have made it clear to me, don't offer them AMD. They've had Intel for 3+ decades. They feel a loyalty to it. Intel has never wronged them, and they want to stick with what they know. They don't want to gamble their business away to see if the AMD is as good as I say it is. They're not interested. So they tell me, when I want a quote from you for a new system, don't waste your time and tell me about AMD. They have literally said that. I'm paraphrasing, it's not word for word. And not just one client, every business client I have, every accountant, every attorney, when I bring up the word AMD, do you want me to quote you an AMD? They go, nope, not interested. I go, you do know they're kind of the same. And they go, listen, Intel is what we've always used. We don't have any complaints. We have no reason to punish Intel or to look anywhere else. If and when that day happens, we'll talk about AMD. That's it. That's the end of the discussion. And I'm not here beating the drum for Intel, and I'm not here beating the drum for AMD. If I am serving you a soda and I say, do you want Coke or Pepsi? Do you want red or blue? Coke is red, Pepsi's blue, right? The labels. I'm not picking sides. I just want to know what you want. The cup and everything is the same price. What is your personal preference? I don't care. Just because you prefer Pepsi doesn't mean I'm going to reconsider drinking Pepsi. No, I am loyal to Coca-Cola. It's what I grew up drinking. And to me, Pepsi tastes too sweet and it's the enemy. But that's my own personal experience, my own reasons. They may not even be logical. It may be more emotional. It may feel like a betrayal to Coca-Cola for me to go to their competitor. People are like this with cars. One of my customers only buys Cadillac. He won't buy any other brand of Cadillac, and he's been buying Cadillac. Anytime he needs a car, he always buys a Cadillac for 50 years. He loves Cadillac. He won't buy any other car other than a Cadillac. And you cannot tell him anything otherwise. He's not going to hear it. For some people, loyalty is a big thing. And I'm not here to judge your loyalty, and I'm not here to have a loyalty when it comes to my business. I'm here to provide no differently than when you go to the supermarket or the convenience store and they have all those different sodas. There's a Diet Coke, there's a Coke Zero. Aren't they the same? Mm-mm. There's Coke and Pepsi and Mountain Dew and Sprite and 7-Up, Dr. Pepper and root beer. None of those choices are bad choices. Some are more popular than others. Did you know, talk about a squirrel moment, Coke has always been the #1 soda, outselling everybody. But who is in #2? Who's in second place? And if you say Pepsi, you're wrong. Not anymore. Does anybody in the chat room want to look that up real quick? Tell me the #2, second only to Coca-Cola, most popular soda brand currently in 2026. John Downey wants to know my thoughts on Snapdragon processors. You know, I have a Snapdragon Samsung. Is it a Samsung? Forgot the name of it. I don't have any complaints. They talk about some compatibility issues. I've not experienced them. I see Instant House Call keeps alerting me that they're going to come out with a new version that supports Instant House Call on ARM. I've been using Instant House Call on ARM for over a year. I didn't know it wasn't compatible. I don't know what they're talking about. But there are some applications that don't run well or will run at all. Apparently, I'm not using any of those applications on that laptop. It doesn't really run any differently, so it's a personal preference. I bought it for the battery life. Yeah, Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper is #2 in the is it worldwide or just the US? Pepsi was #2 since like 1985, something like that. They've been #2 a long time. That's pretty incredible to see the popularity of Dr. Pepper. What's interesting is before there was Coke, Dr. Pepper existed. So it's kind of interesting. Just because you're first doesn't mean you're going to be #1. Dr. Pepper came out, then Coke came out. Anyway, it's fascinating history there and the culture and the shifts of times and how our preferences and our culture have changed. Bradley's saying Sprite is third. Well, what did Pepsi fall to then? Because I assumed Pepsi would be third, but I didn't look anywhere past that. Pepsi fell that far? In global rankings, Red Bull has emerged as #2. And that tastes like cough syrup. I don't know how they can choke that down. Ugh. Linux Gamer says he grew up on Dr. Pepper and Mr. Pibb. There you go. And so you probably are loyal to those, right? It was an influence on you at a very young age, like Coca-Cola was for me. Actually, I think when I was younger, I thought Coke wasn't good. When I was a child, I preferred, I think it was Sunkist, orange. I always loved orange soda. Now I can't stand it, but you know, even as an individual, forget the culture. I would eat things as a child. I couldn't stomach it today. I'm not having any macaroni and cheese. I used to eat that a lot. I used to eat fish sticks. I am not eating any fish sticks. What else did I used to eat? I mean, some stuff like a grilled cheese sandwich, I'll still enjoy that today. I don't eat cereal anymore. It's kind of disgusting. I used to sit down in front of the TV with a box of Golden Grams and just eat it right out of the box. No, thank you. So even as an individual, I've evolved and changed over the years what my preferences are. Nothing wrong with that. It's just part of growing. Let's see if there's other questions we can answer here in the chat. I've not been paying attention. Intro Stewart said you could always start a Twitch channel part-time, you'd gain a following. See, here's the problem. The idea that you obviously haven't looked for me on Twitch. I've had a Twitch channel for a long time, and clearly it doesn't have a big following for you to assume I don't even have one, because clearly even you didn't look for it. So I wish what you were saying was true, that I would have a big following, but I do have a Twitch channel. And it does not have a big following, and it's been around a number of years, and it's never gained any traction. Mr. Sam says, we baseline 16 gigs of RAM minimum for customer computers so we can handle Windows 11, Office, and browser. He says 8 gigs is acceptable for older hardware, that's fine, but nothing less. I think 8 gigs will work fine, especially on modern hardware. If anything, I'd reverse, and this is how people disagree, right? But I would say the older the hardware is, the more important more memory is. So if you have a system that's 8 years old and it has 16 gigs of RAM, and you have a system you just bought today and it only has 8 gigs of RAM, the system you bought today will probably be so much faster with just 8 gigs of RAM. But you know, you sell what you sell, and you do what you do, and you support your customers to what you think is right. And I'm just sharing with you a difference between where we see values, you know. Ron Hillier is a friend of mine from growing up. He says, I'm actually 13 now. Well, I'm younger than you, so what does that make me? Eichmann said, I have not used a third-party utility in Windows since 2018, even stopped using Revo uninstaller. I have not had a single problem since I stopped using those utilities, but prior to that, I used to have more problems than I do now. How do you think I stay in business? You think I just let my customers install whatever the hell they want and then I get to clean up their messes? No. They are instructed as part of my contract of service that everything has to be installed by me, or at least if you're going to install something, you need to tell me about it. Customer calls me the other day. Says, how come I can't connect to our Wi-Fi? You don't have Wi-Fi. What are you talking about? Yeah, we've had Wi-Fi for over a year now. I was connecting with it fine last year. What are you talking about? We had a discussion, the owner and I, and it was a lively discussion. And the owner doesn't trust Wi-Fi, and they have people's personal private information from their customers. No Wi-Fi. We disconnected it from the ceiling because they didn't know the name and password to it. They didn't know how to log into it. And I wasn't going to make a special trip all the way down there with a ladder to get up to the ceiling. I just told them, if you have a ladder, just take it down. And so we did. That was 2 years ago. Haven't heard a word since. So my phone rings. It's this customer. It's one of his employees. And I said, what do you mean you can't get on the Wi-Fi? when did you guys get Wi-Fi? I'm the guy that's supposed to put the Wi-Fi in. At the very least, you should have told me. Well, nobody really takes the reins at this company. Okay. All right. What are you using for Wi-Fi? I don't know. So it turns out they have AT&T service provider. And I said, well, how did you set up the Wi-Fi? Well, I didn't set it up. The other employee did. Well, let me talk to the other employee. So the other employee goes, well, there's an app we download on your phone, and that's how you turn the Wi-Fi on. An app to get into the router? I don't know. Did you guys buy an access point, like a cellular hotspot? No, we don't have a cellular hotspot. But if you don't know what you have, how do you know you don't have that? I'm missing a little piece of information here. The question is, when we were setting up some new computers and we wanted to put them on Wi-Fi, sometimes we had to try 4 times before they would connect. Like, it wouldn't just connect. We had to keep trying and trying. And now my laptop that used to connect won't connect anymore. Sorry, there's a gnat. And this is all happening over the phone. I can't see anything. And I said, well, it's about a 6-hour drive for me to go over there. It's a long way to go to push a button or to look at a picture of a make and model number. I said, okay, I want you to call your internet service provider and find out if there's a limit of how many people can talk, you know, because I don't know how old this router is. You can't just endlessly put wireless devices on it. And now employees are all attaching their phones to the Wi-Fi. So every employee is doing it. Then you've got legitimate use case for the computers they need to connect to Wi-Fi. I want you to call the ISP. Find out if there's a limit. There always is a limit. What is the limit? So they call the ISP and they call me back and they said, there's a limit of 10 devices at any given time. I said, and how many devices do you have connected? So she says, well, I think if I pull up the app, it'll show me. And it shows 11 devices. Well, the 11th one is the wired feed going into the Wi-Fi, or it's a wired port in the back of the router. Okay. So the reason you can't connect is because all the employees have connected their phone to it, and you're limited to 10. So we may have to put the original Wi-Fi back in the ceiling. Do you guys still have it? Well, we'll look around for it. We'll call you back. So I call the owner. I go, what's going on at your office, man? I got this call today, and I want to be able to help your employees. They're supposed to call me, but they're asking me about stuff I don't know. When did this go in? He says, I don't know. I wasn't even aware it was there. Okay. Okay. Well, it is there, and your employees are using it. How come your employees are using it when last we talked, we took the Wi-Fi out. We physically removed it. He goes, I'll be honest with you. I can't think of a single reason why my employees need to be on the Wi-Fi. They have no business for that. Their personal phones have no business connecting to our internet. I go, well, one of your employees wants to plug the laptop or, use the laptop. There's no reason that employees should be bringing their own personal laptop into the building. Okay. Does it hurt anything? Like, if it's secure, do you care? And he's like, I can't imagine any reason my employees need Wi-Fi. So as far as I'm concerned, whether they have it or they don't have it, I don't care. Okay, that's all I need to know. So then I call the employee back. I go, look, I just talked to the owner. And I want to know who put the Wi-Fi in. You guys just do whatever the heck you want. You don't check with anybody. And well, the owner's pretty hands-off. Well, this is true. Yeah? Yeah. So we took care of it ourselves. Okay? All right. And who did that? We don't remember. It was 2 years ago. Oh, it's been there 2 years. Okay. Oh, my head. Okay. I can't log into the router. The router's behind a firewall, and you have to be in the building 6 hours away. There's no way for me to, all the computers are connected to this side of the firewall. I need to get behind it. So I can't even connect remotely to a computer that's on the other side of the firewall. There is no computer on the other side of the firewall. And the firewall's creating a virtual LAN, so they're all on a different IP range than the router is. There's no way for me to get there other than for me to be on site, change the local IP, hard code it, which will lose internet access, but then give me access to the router. It's a 6-hour drive each way. How am I doing this? Over the phone. Okay. When you called the ISP, they told you there was a 10-device limit? Yes. And you verified it because you looked on the app. What's the name of the app? Let me download it on my phone. So I pull my phone out, I download their AT&T app. I go, give me the login information for the business owner that you're using so I can see what you're seeing. And this app comes up, and you can configure the Wi-Fi. It's in fact, the only way I can configure the Wi-Fi. And I'm looking at it, and I don't see anywhere where you can turn the Wi-Fi on or off or set the passwords. But then eventually in a submenu of a submenu, I see an advanced section. So I click on advanced, and it says, we need to turn location settings on before we let you in here. Like, no, you don't. I'm not allowing location. It says, well, we're not allowing you into these settings. Okay. So I call the employee up. I go, do me a favor. Do you have the app on your phone? Yes. And you're in the building? Yes. Because you have to be in the building with location settings on to gain access to the advanced part of these settings in the app. I can't do it. There's nothing I can do from 6 hours away. Okay, no problem. Okay, now when you're in the app, you click here and you click there. You following me? Yeah. Do you see advanced? Yeah. Do you see now? It should say, according to my research on Google, you should be looking at your Wi-Fi SSID password, and it should say how many connections are allowed. Yep. I go, what does it say for the guest account? It says 10. I go, do me a favor, change that number. She goes, okay, can I make it 50? Make it 50. Now hit save. Okay, is everything working? Yes. So when the employee called the internet service provider and they said, is there a limit to the number of Wi-Fi guest connections? And the person that answered the phone at AT&T said, yes, it's 10. They did not volunteer any more information that you can change that. So I'm here taking notes. Okay, this is the make and model of the modem, and this is the SSID and the password for the main network. This is the SSID and the password for the guest network. Is there a way to turn off the main network and only have the guest network? No. Okay, well, if they were to log into the main network, can they see the server? Can they get to the... No, because that's all on a VLAN on the other side of the firewall. So essentially the whole thing, regardless, is a guest network on that side of the firewall. You can't access anything on the other side. So all the security issues are gone just by dumb luck. Nobody can change their firewall because no one knows the login and password to it. And they have a smart switch, which may also be configured with VLAN settings, which nobody knows the name and password to. And I could physically reset them, but then I will lose all of the settings. In their phone system, I believe it is their recollection that that equipment was put in and configured for their VoIP system. And I don't know what was configured. So if I reset it and the phone stopped working, I'm going to have to figure this all out. In the meantime, what are they going to do without phones? So it's like dealing with a live wire. I'm trying very, very cautiously to make some adjustments, but I don't want to get myself electrocuted. It would be best if we could just turn the power off. But if we do that, we're going to lose the configuration that nobody knows what it is. And yeah, I can recreate it. You just unplug it and wait to hear the screaming. But as we progress, I'm documenting it. So this whole Wi-Fi issue will never puzzle me again. I have the notes. I'll never remember, but I know where the notes are. And it says, here's the name and password and the SSID and password, and here's how many accounts it allows, and you must use the app to make the changes, and yada, yada, yada. And as I gain information, because I will get access to that firewall and I will get access to that switch. And when I do, I'll be documenting it, because nobody at this company documented anything, and they've had so many people play with it, nobody knows who did what or when. You understand how I make a living, right? None of this involves Call of Duty, liquid coolers, or overclocking. And what's at stake is the survival of the business and these people's ability to pay their bills that they have at home, that are the employees. Not to mention the customers that they service rely on them for the services they provide. It's all critical. So another piece of the story I left out was that after I talked to the owner, and he said there's no reason for the employees to have Wi-Fi. I said to the employee, the owner of the company says there's no reason any of you need access to the Wi-Fi. So do you agree with that? Or can you explain to me why it's needed? And the employee said, we have customers that come in here and they need to show us their data. It's a CPA, so people need to pull up their W-2s and other tax information. So whether it's on their phone or a tablet or a laptop, they need Wi-Fi access. It's for the customers. Oh, I don't know a CPA that doesn't have Wi-Fi access for their customers. That is a normal, expected thing. Now I get it. And since it's there anyway, right? Why not connect your phone to it? So the employee, you know, and this is how I am. I'm just blunt. Do you actually need your phone to connect to the Wi-Fi? And the employee said, no. Nobody here needs their phone to connect to Wi-Fi. Okay, so then do you need Wi-Fi? We do. Okay, help me understand why. For the customers that come in, they need to pull information up. Oh, okay. Now I'm on board. Now I see how. And yeah, does it matter if you connect your phone to it since you got it anyway? Who's it hurt? Not hurting anybody. Document, document, document. We're never ever going to revisit this puzzle ever again. It's solved permanently. That's what I do for a living. I solve problems permanently. I don't solve all the problems. I can't solve a problem that doesn't exist. But once it happens, the first time, I can do everything in my power to make sure that we have a contingency and we can put that back up and running quickly. And do what I can to prevent it from failing to begin with. Wasn't that fun? You want to do what I do for a living? Do you know how many hours I spent on the phone? Oh, and how many days to get this sorted? And I talked to 3 different employees and the owner before I could take a little bit from this one and a little bit from that one, because their information didn't overlap. So I had to kind of take a little bit here and a little bit there and put it down in my notes in a way that made sense to me. And it all kind of came together like a Tetris puzzle. It's like, now it all makes sense. Okay. Then I was able to call the owner and explain it all to him, and he doesn't care. He's like, whatever. Did you take care of it? Whatever it is. I don't want it on my plate. Just get it off my plate. That's what I hire you for. Okay. I got no problem with that. A lot of business owners are very micromanaging, not this one. Lou Greeny said, I have an update that Asus Zen Wi-Fi he's been testing out, router, has been absolutely flawless and amazing. He also has an Ace Magic CK11 mini PC that he's been testing, and it's been running strong. And of course, Project Zero that we built here that he purchased, he says it's running amazing. Love it. Love it, love it. Thank you for the update. That's our friend Lou Greeny out there in Vermont. Charles says, it reminds me of the story of a lady calling her service tech that her PC wasn't powering on, but it turns out the city was in blackout. Yep. Yep. AA Prime says, Carey is a part-time AT&T tech support unofficially. I can't provide my customers with internet service. They have to buy it from somebody. Time Warner, Roadrunner, Cox Cable, AT&T. It's my job to support it. And since I wasn't there when it was put in, and it's never been an issue, I never thought to really, get the password and everything to configure it, because nothing needed to be configured. You just need to leave everything alone. They had other issues when they hired me. It had nothing to do with that. So the last thing I needed was to create more issues. I was there to solve problems that they were actually having. So when they call me with a new problem, when I thought we nipped that in the bud 2 years ago, I thought we ripped that Wi-Fi out. And I'm like, oh yeah, we did rip it out. Where the hell are you getting Wi-Fi? This whole thing was so weird to me. What do you mean you've had it over a year? And it's my job to answer their questions. When you call me with a Wi-Fi question, I'm supposed to provide the solution. But how is that possible when no one told me that you had Wi-Fi until it wasn't working? And that you've had it for over a year. And in that entire year, no one so much as thought to mention to me, oh, we turned the Wi-Fi on. Because I'd be like, what Wi-Fi? Where are you getting it from? How did you turn it on? And if they would have told me at that point, they would have been able to say who did it and what they did. But so much time has passed, that person may not even be working for the company, let alone know who it was. So time is of the essence to keep me at least updated. And better yet, just call me. Let me tell you how to turn the Wi-Fi on. Let me provide the solution to you. But you don't have to. It's your company. If you want to do things on your own, all I ask is that you just send me a note, keep me updated so I can adjust to know to support that and be ready for those calls should they come in the future. Nobody did it on purpose, but it's frustrating. And not just for me, for everyone. What do you mean you don't know? How could you not know? Because nobody told me. They were very nice about it. They weren't upset. I was probably more upset than anybody. Just, when did this happen? How long has this been going on? And now you're having a problem with it? All this time you've had this and never told me, never said a word about it. And now I'm talking to 3 different employees about it. But not a single employee ever talked to me about it before that. And now 3 of them all want to talk to me about it. Crazy. All of a sudden, it was important to multiple people at the same time. Mr. Sam wants to know, what Wi-Fi or other network equipment do you use for your offices? It depends on the office and what their needs are and what their budget is. There is no one brand or one particular model. Some offices, I'm coming into them as their tech after those decisions were made by somebody else. And my job is to just keep it running or to upgrade or replace it if need be. But if there's nothing that I can justify replacing, then the goal is leave it alone. We're not just spending money to spend money, and I'm not putting in equipment because I'm trying to sell equipment. We're trying to solve problems. So if they're having a Wi-Fi problem, it just kind of depends on how big of an office, how big of a coverage area, how many people are connecting to the Wi-Fi, things of that nature. Sometimes, in most cases, I'd say there's already Wi-Fi there, and they just want me to control it and maintain it and secure it. So every client's different. There's no 2 alike. Mark Gaines said, Carey, I took your advice and I ordered a Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120 air cooler. Let me know that works for you. Poor Mark Gaines. I feel so bad for Mark. He went with a really nice all-in-one liquid cooler, very expensive Trix 360 liquid cooler, and found that the RGB and the fan controller weren't compatible with Corsair, which is what everything else in RGB uses, and it's a big nightmare, 2 different pieces of software, or you got to download a third-party like RGB software that can sort of mesh them together. It's a hassle.
So even though there's nothing wrong with the cooler, he decides if I just go with Corsair, I can use all the same software and all the same controller, and I don't have to pay for like RGB signal or any such stuff. And then he has a problem with the screen not working. So then he contacts Corsair and they send him a new cooler. So he takes the old cooler out, puts the new cooler in, mails the old cooler back. And then within a couple of weeks, the screen starts having issues. Then he downloads a firmware update and then the screen is fixed. And then he starts, I guess, having issues again. And, you know, we're talking about a lot of time and a lot of money for a problem that just won't go away. For a cooler he doesn't necessarily need just because it's got RGB lights on it, which is fine if you want to pay more and deal with these problems that if you didn't have RGB and you didn't have the screen, you wouldn't have these problems, I guarantee it. So how badly are you willing to sacrifice your time and money if the RGB you're putting in is creating nightmares? At what point do you have enough and say, I'm done with it? Now, if you plug it in, you don't have any problems, nothing to fix. But if the minute you solve the problem, you end up with another problem and you solve that problem, and every time solving the problem is completely removing and reinstalling the cooler, at what point do you go, I've had enough, it's not worth it? So what Mark is saying here is apparently he's had enough. And instead of a $250 to $300 liquid cooler that he's installed now for the third time, he bought a $30 air cooler. So let us know how that works out. I was impressed with the Thermalright. For $38, it cooled a very high-end 9850 X3D Intel AMD chip very easily. In fact, its temps were lower than the all-in-one cooler that was over $200. And it doesn't have all the cabling, it doesn't have the RGB, there's no software, it just freaking works. It's not much to look at. But if you bought a computer to look at it, what's your TV for? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to stare at a lamp. Let me stare at these lights. So I'm not telling anybody what they should do, but I'm making them aware you can make, if you decide you've had enough, it's up to you to make that change. And apparently Mark has decided on his own he's had enough. So do follow up with us. And I'd be very curious if you run, I'm sure Mark knows what his maximum temperatures are with that cooler on his chip. Just change that expensive, all those wires, change that expensive all-in-one cooler out, get it out of there, put the Thermalright Assassin on there for $38, and let me know how it cools. Because I know it's going to install easier. You're not going to have any problems with it. Once it's installed and working, it'll just be that way indefinitely. And then it's a fraction of the cost. And then what are your temps, maximum temps between your $38, well, it's $38 here in the States. I don't know what it is there. But your inexpensive air cooler to your fancy liquid cooler with all the wiring and RGB and nonsense and software. Or you won't be having a firmware update on an air cooler. Be prepared to sit down, because I won't be surprised if he tells you the Thermalright actually doesn't reach the temperatures that the all-in-one reaches, that the all-in-one actually runs hotter. Because we witnessed that here on the 9850X3D. The $38 cooler ran the CPU at its maximum temp, cooler than any other cooler at any other price that we tested. We did it live. The other coolers looked a lot neater. The Thermaltake's not much to look at. But again, what are you doing? Staring at your computer? You don't see me going over here going, I'm not paying attention to this. This is for you. This isn't for me. It's because I have a camera. This is for you. I don't need that. I would turn that off. That's annoying. If I want a lava lamp, I'll go buy a lava lamp. If I want RGB, I'll just go on Amazon and spend $12. I'll buy a bright light. And I can customize it and put the little colored pegs in it. Look at here. Look how much cheaper this is. Just buy yourself a light bright and put your colors in there and stick it to the side of the computer with magnets. No software, no firmware. And the more pegs, the higher the resolution. No problem. Done and done. Old school RGB, 20 bucks. 20 bucks. I'm just here to solve problems, man. Actually, I would prefer to spend more and have headaches and nightmares that never go away. Oh, you and I see the world differently. Don't let me get in your way. Please, go ahead of me. Danielle Emberley said, we now have 2 companies that'll bring digital fiber all the way to the home at rates much cheaper than cable internet. I've not rushed to change what's working. Yep. Yeah, I was visiting Subaru Mike the other day, and he said these people came knocking on his door. They're installing fiber in the neighborhood. And they said, you know, we can get you gigabit internet for $60 a month. $69, which is about half the price the cable company wants. And they said, you know, would you like to sign up for it? We're going door to door. Subaru Mike says, you know, I pay the cable company $50 a month. I have basic internet access. Use it to check email. I go on Amazon. I don't need gigabit. They're cheaper than you. Cable company locked my rate in for 3 years, and they gave me the modem and the router completely for free. They said, yeah, but ours is a better deal. And he goes, I don't see how $60 or $69 a month is a better deal than $50 a month. I said, because we're faster. You know, and what am I supposed to do with that? Like, it never occurred to the salesman that there are people that would have no benefit from getting it faster. So they're making an assumption that everybody wants more. And Subaru Mike is saying, I don't even use what I've got. Why do I want more of it? And you're not cheaper. The internet service provider is cheaper at this level. It's a much better deal than you guys. And they locked me in on that price for 3 years. You guys going to do that? No. And they gave me the equipment for free. So you're not a better deal. Have a nice day. Guy didn't know what to say. I think he said, I guess it's not for you then. Glad we can agree. Amazing Airshow video says, what is bandwidth when it comes to the internet? Is it the speed to the router of the ISP? Well, internet bandwidth is the amount of data you can transfer in a specific period of time. So if, for example, you think of it like water pressure, if you're in a house with a small water heater and you take a long shower, you might run out of hot water before your shower's over. And in the sense of bandwidth, what if somebody else is also washing dishes or doing laundry at the same time you're in the shower? The water pressure drops, right? And if somebody flushes the toilet, then maybe the cold water suddenly gets used to refill the toilet. And now the hot water pressure is no longer balanced. So while the toilet's refilling, you're getting scolded by the hot water because of the imbalance created through the amount of use at the same time. So the more water pressure you have and the bigger the water heater is, the more often that multiple people can use it simultaneously without affecting one or the other. If you are downloading Windows 11 like we've shown you how to do, and that download takes you a minute or that download takes you 12 minutes, that's the speed of your internet. But if you have a high-speed internet connection and multiple people are using it, somebody's watching Netflix, somebody's gaming online, you're talking about a family with kids, maybe the mother is watching TV on Netflix, the kid's playing on Xbox, the father's on his phone, right? And you have a basic tier internet service. The mother's going to say, my TV show keeps pausing. It's getting on my nerves. The kid's going to say, my game latency sucks. So you have to buy more bandwidth. If you live alone and it's just you, there's nobody there to flush the toilet when you're in the shower, right? So it becomes more about the higher the bandwidth, the more people are using it at the same time. That's the best way to think about it. So for an individual, somebody who just lives alone, to say my 1 gig internet isn't enough, I want 2.5 gig internet, they're probably not going to notice any difference at all unless they're doing a lot of file transfers. Your upload speed and download speed will make those file transfers much faster, but I hope the extra money for the equipment and the monthly cost justifies a lack of patience. The files are still going to transfer, right? I have a client that has a house in South Dakota, and they have their NAS here in Phoenix, and they like to access the NAS from South Dakota. Well, as you can imagine, doesn't have a very good internet connection in South Dakota. So no matter how fast of an internet connection he puts in Phoenix, doesn't make the one in South Dakota any more powerful. So there's no sense in having one end of it being super high end and the other end being low end. You're just wasting money. So ideally, you'll try and get them balanced. So if the fastest internet he can get in South Dakota is, DSL speeds, let's say, then having anything above DSL speeds here and paying extra for it is a waste of money for him. His file transfers won't go any faster in South Dakota. But when he's in Phoenix and he's doing something like downloading Windows 11, it'll happen faster in Phoenix. And is the difference in speed when he's here, depending on how much time do you spend in Phoenix and how much time do you spend in South Dakota, it's up to each person to decide if it's worth the amount of money to be spent for the time savings for when you're here. In this client's case, they're spending more and more time. They eventually want to just get out of Phoenix, and they're kind of weaning themselves away from Phoenix. And last I talked to him, he's probably spending, I think, the majority of the year now in South Dakota. But he told me his goal is to be 100% in South Dakota. So all that equipment that he's got, the NAS, that'll all get moved when he finally moves, and then it'll be local to him there, which will be the speed of his network and has nothing to do with his ISP because he won't be using it remotely. On the other hand, if he keeps a person working for him in Phoenix remotely, then it'll be reversed. And now when they go to access the files on the NAS and it's in South Dakota on a slow internet, no matter how fast they have it here in Phoenix, you know what I'm saying? It won't matter, at least for this client. They could have multiple clients, I don't know. But if this person is only working for this person remotely and nobody else, there's no reason for them to spend more on an internet connection so they can get more work done, because the bottleneck will be in South Dakota, where the server or the NAS is. So hopefully that explains a little bit about what bandwidth means and what it does. Phil Stodd said he's got 100 megabits per second. So we've got 2,500 megabits per second. And, do we need 2,500 megabits per second? Probably not. We probably don't need it. It's just Mara and myself. But Mara will come down here and say, don't listen to that idiot. We absolutely need it. If you could tell Mara she could have more than she could ever use, she'd still tell you it's not enough. Let me try something. Hey, Mara? I don't think she's hearing this. Come down here for a second. What speed internet do we need to have?
Fiber.
What's
we have now isn't fast enough.
what we have now is not fast enough.
Yeah.
What would be fast enough? Give me a number.
I would love 10 gig. That would be
10 gig.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's only a start.
How much?
Up to 25.
How much would be too? How much would it take for you to say that's more than we need?
DWDM, 100 gig.
100 gig.
Yeah.
What's DWD?
I used to support as a network engineer. That's
100 gig.
Yeah.
Would be more than we need?
That might be just right.
I've made my point. And
What we have now
who's
is
paying for that?
working. We are paying.
You're going to get a second job just to pay for that.
Working a second job.
Just every penny you make will go to, and you say it's worth it.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. That's I predicted all of this. I told the audience that's exactly what you would say. Good job. Well done.
Well, Well, in terms of that, I am predictable because I want the best.
You know, my client only buys Cadillacs. He can afford them. That's all he buys.
There's a reason. I mean, what I do requires a lot of bandwidth, and like my PC built that sucker to be. There's a reason for that. I'm using it.
Okay.
So with data and bandwidth, I like having it. I like being able to use it, and I use it a lot. It makes my job that much easier. It makes my life that much less stressful.
Okay.
So
that's what you tell yourself.
So as soon as fiber is available in this area, we are getting it.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Leibowitz said, for the latter problem, oh wait, what is he talking about? Oh. Looks like I missed a few. He says, among my clients, the most common is people trying to get whole home internet from an ISP's gateway. Most often, the client's home is brick with additions, and Wi-Fi is literally hitting a brick wall. The other problem I often encounter is that Chicago's broadband situation is Byzantine. We have Xfinity, Astound Broadband, and AT&T Uverse. But in any given location, they don't all work well. Some work better in some places than others. He says, for the latter problem, I'll ask the client to talk to the neighbors sharing their alley, see what's working for them. That's the hardest thing for clients to accept. For some reason, they'd rather canvass the whole city rather than talk to their neighbors whose experience is actually relevant. Yeah, I mean, these days, mesh routers are pretty inexpensive. So by supplementing the ISP-provided gateway with your own, which is what we do, the router that we are given by the ISP for our 2,500 megabits per second, by the way, that's only download. That's upload is less than 200. But the point is, that's not good enough. The router we use, the Deco DE95, is an additional one-time only expense. Buy once, cry once, and it gets the job done. And we don't have Wi-Fi. Well, very rarely do we have Wi-Fi issues. But if we, let's see, BE, is it a 95? Yeah. Here's what we use in the studio. So this plugs into the gateway. We disable the Wi-Fi on the gateway. Just log into it and turn it off. We come out of the gateway. This sits right next to the gateway. Hardwired in. And then the other two towers, one is right in front of me and one is upstairs. And we're achieving 250 megabytes per second on Wi-Fi, which is faster than a gigabit wired connection. And it's solid as a rock. Pretty rare that we have problems with it, but it is Wi-Fi. We don't backhaul it on the wired side. And these will also handle 10 gig wired connections. Those two black ports, those are 10 gig ports. So with a 10 gig NAS, plugged into this, physically plugged in. So upstairs we have the NAS with one of these mesh points next to it, and a short cable runs from that 10 gig port to the 10 gig port on the NAS. And Mara's computer upstairs is 10 gig, and it's physically wired into the other 10 gig port. So when she wants to transfer files to or from the NAS, instead of 250 megabytes per second, she's getting about 900. So it takes her a quarter of the time to move the files. But, you know, if something takes 2 minutes versus 30 seconds, I don't see the big deal of it. But, you know, to each their own. But it's pricey. It's expensive. But you get what you pay for. And that's a discounted price, too. It's normally $1,300. You can buy a used one for just over $1,000, save you another $150 on that. All right, let's go back over to chat room and see if there's other questions we can answer. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. The Greenie said he's got Xfinity's Gigabit X2. That's 2 gigabits up and down. Ooh. Oh, no. 300 up, 2,000 down. Still really good. So we're getting 2,500 instead of 2,000 on the down, but we're only getting about 200 on the up. Luke's getting another 100 on top of that. Now, for me to broadcast, if you're curious, I average about well, I think OBS will tell me. 4K, 30 frames a second. The bandwidth I'm consuming is around 35 megabytes a second. So having 130 to 200 is 3 times, 4 times, 5 times more than I need. But that also means that while I'm broadcasting, Mara can be uploading things too. I mean, theoretically, she could have a live stream at 4K at the same time, and neither one of us would glitch out or drop frames. We'd still have plenty of bandwidth left over. So, you know, we're not running a server. And then when we do this, when we broadcast, it's just a couple hours every few days. So it's not a 24/7 upload thing. So we have plenty. But back at Studio B, ooh, no. Studio B, I think we had a total of 30. And anytime anything was transferring on the network, yeah, the whole thing slowed down. So we only broadcast at 1080, because at 1080 you can do that with 8. But 4K is 4 times 1080. So 8 times 4 is essentially what you can plan on needing for your upload bandwidth to broadcast live. Now, if I wasn't live, then it wouldn't matter. If I recorded the videos and uploaded them, I could upload them on dial-up. Might take a while. But because we're live, and we're doing such high bandwidth, such high resolution with low latency, that's what enables us to have these conversations. That's why Starlink wouldn't work for us. The latency would be insane. But, you know, it would mean finding other ways, lowering the resolution or lowering the frames per second, try and reduce that bandwidth. But we'd still have the latency from the ground to the satellite, which means that there would be a delay, much bigger delay than what we have now. Can we create subnets on the router? Mara might know the answer to that. I don't know. You're basically talking about VLANs. Can the router make VLANs? Hey, there's our friend Mitch Morrison joining. Why did the turtle cross the road? We don't know yet. He's still crossing. Good to see you, Mitch. There's your dad joke for the day. So the gist of today's video, I hope has sunk in through the live, unrehearsed example, booting from this drive versus booting from that one, and changing nothing else. People who will benefit from more than 8 gigs of RAM, some people are like, well, Windows even run on 8 gigs? Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. When we were always relying on these before the invention of the solid state drive becoming available to consumers, boy oh boy was RAM important, because you wanted to avoid swapping over to this. It was so slow. But swapping over to an SSD, you barely even notice the difference. But there are still occasions under heavy resource loads, which could be some games or certain applications that are very resource intensive, where the application is more responsive if it has more accessible RAM. But if you're doing things that fancy, you ought to know you're not doing something cheap. So why would you try and do something expensive in the cheapest way possible? Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like somebody buying a big screen HD TV and then just putting an antenna on it. I mean, I'm sure somebody does that. But I think if you're going to go through all the effort of spending all this money on a giant television, you're probably going to get some kind of a streaming service or television service so that you have a variety of things to watch and quality signal strength, so that you don't have channels kind of going in and out as signals today do on antennas. Ask me how I know. So thank goodness for my Fire Stick. We don't have TV service. We have streaming services only. And it doesn't make any sense to have a giant television and then throw an antenna on it. Not that I can make any heads or tails of. In much the same way, it wouldn't make any sense to have a really high intensity application, resource hungry, and then try and think you can get away with that cheap. You're probably not going to be satisfied with your experience until you give it what it needs. Otherwise, you know, any computer we use, it will do the same job. I can grab the oldest computer in the place, put it up here on the bench, and I can edit 4K videos on it. No problem. It's going to take a while, and when I ask the computer to do something in a complicated edit with a lot of overlays and transitions, it's going to crank away after the request before it responds back. But it'll do it. And you say, well, I have this old car. And when I get the old car to the freeway and I go onto the on-ramp and I need to speed up and get in line with traffic, the car can't get out of its own way. It's slow. Say it's a 65 horsepower 1970 Volkswagen Beetle. It was cheap. But man, you ain't passing anybody unless you're going downhill. And if you have to make an emergency maneuver, it's not the most maneuverable thing. And if you reach a point in your life where you just say, this thing takes forever to get up to speed, I feel like it's dangerous because of the lack of, when I put my foot down to the, on the gas pedal to when the engine actually starts to react, there's too big of a delay there. That's when you'll decide it's time to spend some more money for something better. But there's certain upgrades you can do where you're going to defeat the entire, you'll exceed the value of the car with the upgrades, where it doesn't make any sense to put $2,000 into a $500 car. At some point you go, just need a better car. I need something more modern with more horsepower that can get out of the way, that's more responsive and has all the modern safety equipment, backup cameras and Bluetooth and airbags. And then when you calculate how much more you're getting for the money, you realize the one that's more expensive is a much better deal. But we each have to kind of come to terms with that on our own, unless you were born into money and you never had to be in one of those cheap cars, in which case, well, you'll never know and appreciate the joy of a modern car. You just take it for granted. But yeah, knowing the difference is invaluable and priceless. But on the other hand, going to a high-end, 700 horsepower Dodge Hellcat or something, too rich for my blood. I couldn't even afford the insurance on it, let alone the fuel. I wouldn't mind driving somebody else's, but I can't afford that, so I don't own one. See how this works? If you want it, work for it. Nobody's holding you back from buying anything you want. If you're willing to put the work in, you're the only one in your own way. But if you just think someone's going to hand it to you, let me know how that works out, because I've been waiting. I've been waiting for my Rolls Royce, and nobody's offered me one yet. Any day now. I also don't want one so badly that I'm willing to work that hard for some materialistic piece of automotive, engineering that basically takes me from point A to point B exactly the same way in the same amount of time is what I have now for a fraction of the price and maintenance cost. John Downey's asking Mara if you can set up a port on the router to send all the data this port, then monitor it with something like Wireshark. It sounds like you're describing a firewall. Bradley said Microsoft recommends 2 gigs of RAM per processor core. Yeah, I mean, I've not quite heard that before. I don't know where you're getting that. Do you have a link from Microsoft? Where did you hear that? Or where are you getting your information from? To the best of my knowledge, Windows has a requirement and a recommendation of hardware that has nothing to do with cores. Bill Stott said he had a 1962 Volkswagen Bug with a 40 horsepower engine. We used to say if speed kills, buy a Volkswagen and live forever. Mara's asking John Downey if he's referring to a switched port analyzer or span, like on Cisco, or if he's referring to port mirroring. Well, I'm glad those two are having that conversation because it's going right over my head now. It's funny how, and I'm not making any accusations here, but it's an observation that I hear from people, not these specific people, about how much they care about their privacy. And then I hear from certain people about how much they want to spy on their own data and be constantly aware of it. So it's okay if they do it. I find the whole conversation amusing, and I'm not saying it's the same person. It could be, I don't know, I'm not paying that much attention. But it's sort of like, if I tell you how to securely erase this drive, I'm going to have people saying, how do I get the data back off the drive? It's like, some people want to know, they have a drive failure. Is there a way to get the drive data back? Some people want to know, I want to make sure no one can ever get the drive data back. I think that's hilarious. Nobody can agree. Sometimes it's the same person who says, I've got a failed drive and I've got data on it. And they weren't smart enough to back it up. They don't admit that. But by asking the question, you've implied you weren't smart enough to back it up. Okay, well, that ship has sailed, that milk has spilled, right? So now what? Well, you can send it to a data recovery company. It may be that same person. Maybe. I mean, I don't know, but I'm saying it's possible that same person then comes back a few months later and says, I want to sell this drive and I want to make sure the person I sell it to can never get the data off of it. How can I securely erase it? Destroy the drive. Take it outside with a hammer and smash it up. Well, that's not good for the environment. Well, neither are you. Your existence on this planet is not good for the environment. What are you going to do about it? I got a feeling you're probably going to continue to exist, and to hell with the environment, right? If your data, if you're willing to sacrifice your identity because you believe that You put some faith that somebody said it's securely erased. How do you know? So then if you sell it and it turns out it wasn't securely erased and your identity is stolen, wouldn't it have been a lot faster and cheaper for you to just destroy this and to hell with the environment? Which would you prefer? So if the data is that important and it's absolutely critical, the only absolute way you can guarantee no data recovery is physical destruction. It's that simple. But if it's just done like a thing like, well, I just want to make a reasonable effort, you know, well, then it's super easy. You can just format the drive. I would challenge any of you to do a full-length format. Any of you watching this, just go in Windows, don't do the quick format, do the full format, and then show me that you can get the data back. Show me. Because I don't think any of you have the equipment, the experience, the specialty tools that are required at that level of depth of it. You're not going to find a piece of software that's going to unformat that drive. You can erase the partition and get it back. You can delete files and get them back. You can do a quick format and get it. But a full format, it's gone. I don't even think $300 data recovery with all their fancy equipment and knowledge can get that data back. So then when you start going above and beyond that to like a Department of Defense wipe, it gets so out of control. Just a basic full format is likely all it's going to need. Now, yeah, you can also run a disk part in DOS, and you can wipe the drive that way too. You can do a quick wipe, which can be recovered, or you can do the extensive wipe, which will write over all the sectors just one time. That's all you need. And that's effectively what a format does. And do you want to know how I know this? I'll give you two guesses. In one of them, the answer involves the explanation from Brian Cometa at $300 data recovery on why he can't get the data back. Always consider the source of the information. And he said, it's kind of hard to sell the drive when it's smashed up. Well, how much money do you think I could get for this drive? Seagate 2 terabyte drive. Let's take a look. Let's go over to eBay. Let's see how much money we're wasting here. I don't know what your data's worth. I don't know what how much is your identity worth? If somebody were to steal your identity and you needed to get a lawyer and fill out all the forms and get a new driver's license and new government ID and contact all your credit card companies. And then, I mean, I'm just curious, what do you think you're worth, your identity? What's it worth to you, not to somebody else? What's it worth to you to get it back? How much would you be willing to spend? Let's take a look over at window capture. And this is a Seagate 2000 gig. Is there a model on this? ST2000. That's probably all I need is the model number. I need my other glasses to read this label. Hold on a second. DM 001. Okay. And those are current bidding prices that nobody's buying. So let's find out what somebody in the past has paid. So we'll go down here to completed auction, accepted offers. And sort by lowest price plus shipping. $30. Are these completed? $19. Well, it says parts only. Plus $12.65 for shipping. I don't know. I think your identity's probably worth the $24 to destroy it. I mean, do you get free insurance or do you pay for that? You wouldn't pay $24 for insurance by destroying the drive? You'd rather run the risk and save the $24? I guess that's a choice. Oh, this is accepts offers, not accepted offers. Sorry. Show only sold items. That's the box I wanted. Oh, it's sold at $9. It cost more to ship it. This one was sold for $20.99. I think we're seeing a pretty good average price here, anywhere from $10 to $25. If that is too big of an insurance policy for you to afford because you really need the $20, I don't know what to say. A Prime says do a few zero fills. Just one zero fill is all you're going to need, my friend. Anything more than that is just a placebo at this point. But again, if you destroy the drive, it's a lot faster. So unless you're doing a bunch of them, which is going to take a ton of time, it's faster. Just go ahead and destroy the drives and recycle the materials. That's what I'm telling you. Mark Liebowitz said, I was handed drives that were supposedly full formatted and asked to get back the data. My tools can get something, but it's just bits and pieces that would take days to reconstruct. I don't know how long ago that was. And the conversation I had with Brian over at $300 Data Recovery is that a format doesn't actually format the drive. And Brian said, it's probably been a while since you formatted a drive. I go, yeah, I usually just do the quick format. And he says, we are incapable in the current state, which I think was Windows 10. When you do a full format with Windows 10, we cannot get anything back. Nothing. Can't reconstruct it, nothing. So I don't know which operating system it was formatted with, but Brian Cometa said, a quick format, yes. But this idea of doing like a Department of Defense wipe or zeroing it out, it goes with the, $1 million+ of equipment and specialty tools they have, they can't recover from that. Not a Windows, modern day Windows full format. It basically zeroes out the drive. You don't need any third-party utilities for that anymore. If you want to use it because it makes you feel good, I'm not telling you not to. You're just wasting your time. And if you can prove me wrong, I'd love for you to demonstrate that on video. I have to assume if there's no video, it's because it can't be done. Unless you have some pretty high level, like government level equipment and forensics. All right, guys. Well, I guess, I'm not seeing any more questions in here, so I think we've run out of steam. And all well and good, because we're right about that same point where I usually end these broadcasts anywhere between 2 and 3 hours. I try to keep them at 2, but so long as you guys are interactive with me, I'll stick around. I love having these conversations with you on all these different subjects and sharing with you my perspective and reasoning. Whether or not you agree with it doesn't matter. I'm just telling you how I see it. Mark says, it was recently as 5 years ago, but I don't know if the drive was full formatted. Yeah, it sounds like the client did a quick format. I told the client not even to bother. If we do a format on this drive, a full format on this Windows, do you know how long it's going to take? Anybody? This is probably going to take an hour to format this. But a quick format, it'll do it in about 30 seconds. But that hour-long format, when it's done, you're not getting anything back. But if you want to write zeros on it 16 times, I mean, go ahead, knock yourself out. Not hurting anybody. If you just want to get something done and get on with life, if it's that important to you that you need to erase it 16 times, just destroy the drive. Besides, like what I would say is put it in a drawer, right? Put a label on it, destroy. And one day when you're particularly frustrated or angry, go grab a hammer, go out to your driveway or your sidewalk or the street and take all your anger out on it. And not only are you going to feel a lot better, but you will have also destroyed the data so that it can never be recovered. It's a win-win for everybody. Now, if you've got 300 of these, it's a different story. I want to thank Stephen Detroit for joining us here as a new supporter. Welcome in. And the Van Clink, also a brand new member. Thank you guys for joining the membership. And for those of you in green that have been members, thank you for continuing to support us here. I can't thank you enough. I hope you enjoyed the evidence behind the difference between RAM, mechanical hard drives, and solid state drives and how they affect system boot up times. And that the old school days of adding more RAM to make things go faster pretty much don't apply today, except in certain applications, some gaming type things or Photoshop or high-end resource intensive apps, not what the average user uses. And yeah, if you're wondering, can a machine run fine with 8 gigs of RAM on Windows 11? Absolutely yes. Absolutely. No problems. Would 16 be better? Minorly. For most people, they'd have a hard time telling a difference. With the SSD swapping it so quickly now, it's pretty hard to tell a difference. It can make a difference, but it's very minor. The difference between this and the solid state drive booting, I think was pretty obvious. I don't think anybody could say, I was pretty close. Slightly better. No, it's a night and day difference. And so it used to be a night and day difference by adding RAM. If this was the 1990s and early 2000s, that's what I'd be telling you, buy more RAM. But ever since 2013, when we started putting SSDs in, that no longer became true anymore. But yet the internet continues to repeat baseless information that's currently baseless, that doesn't apply today. And people accept it as though it's truth. And I suggest you decide for yourself. Run the trials yourself. And if you get different results than me, I would love to see it. Make a little video. Take your phone out, record it, upload it to YouTube. It's all free. You can all do it. And let's find out what I don't know. Because if you know something I don't know, please, please show me evidence of it. I have to assume if nobody's sending me any videos, then there is no way to, then you're not proving me wrong. You just perhaps are choosing to believe what you want to. You're allowed to do that. It doesn't matter what's actually happening in reality. If you want to see it a different way, you're welcome. It has no effect on me. But if I'm providing information that's missing a piece or there's an exception, I want you to show me that in a video, demonstrate it, so then I can be educated equally the way I'm educating you in fairness, and we can all grow together. I'm not infallible, and if nobody can be bothered to do that, I have to assume there's a reason for that. It can't be done. Mark said he just upgraded someone's computer on Friday that had 8 gigs of RAM. Computer was slow. Task Manager reported 95% RAM utilization, and I upgraded her to 16 gigs of RAM, and the problem was gone. Well, that is a solution. But the other solution would have been, what is taking the RAM? What's consuming it? And with an SSD, what is it, an old slow SSD? Is that why it's so slow? Because even at 95% RAM usage, which I think would be not unusual for Windows 11 with 8 gigs of RAM to be using nearly all of it, maybe even a little bit more, but it should be swapping that to the SSD where it's almost unnoticeable. So then the question is it a really like low-end SSD, or is the swap file set incorrectly, or is it an application that needs to be shut down, that doesn't need to be running, that's hogging up that RAM? So what I love about this job is Mark and I, for example, could have fixed that customer's problem 4 different ways. In theory, any of those 4 ways could have resolved it. And would it have been cheaper to replace the SSD than to change out the RAM? There's no right or wrong answer. As long as your customer's happy at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You know, you can upgrade your RAM and your SSD all day, but if what Mark is working on is a J4106 Celeron processor, you could put the fanciest paint, tires, and exhaust system on that 1972 Volkswagen Bug. It ain't gonna run much better until you change the engine out. So, you know, Mark isn't telling us what CPU they had, because at some point you're pouring money into potentially a ton of RAM on a CPU that can't even use it. Because you got to ask yourself, if somebody's got 8 gigs of RAM, they probably don't have a high-end CPU, and they probably don't have a high-end SSD. And all of these things, they connect together. One has an impact on the other one, right? Including the software that's on the machine, that also has an impact. All of these things, like a gear, they mesh together. And identifying specifically the point of the choke point may mean that you could make it a little better, like on a low-end processor, but anything spent above and beyond that would be a waste of money until you change the processor. And the cost of that is likely cheaper to just buy a whole new system. So there's 6 different ways you could approach this. I said 4, but I just thought of 2 more ways. Mark says, oh, she had a solid state drive. She also had software she needed to run all the time for work. Okay. Yeah, so depending on, let's say, for example, I have a client and they're running, it's tax season. So they're running tax software. And the tax software is written in such a way that it needs memory to run faster. Generally speaking, no office that uses a computer for work will have 8 gigs of RAM. It would have never been sold right out of the gate. So if a client, a business client, reaches out to me, we don't sell business client computers with 8 gigs of RAM. We don't do it. They would have never had a budget so tight for something so important that earns them money. So we wouldn't have sold it there to begin with. So we never would have had that problem. I assumed you were talking about a home user. He said he did try paring down the installed software. It didn't do enough. So then he went out and upgraded the RAM. It's a 5-year-old laptop with decent specs. Well, and again, if it's for a business and it's there to earn somebody money, we usually replace computers starting at around 5 years old. We just need an excuse. So if I tell a business owner, you should upgrade, and he's not having any, or she's not having any problems, it's a hard sell. But the minute they have a problem and that machine is 5 years old or older, my answer is, let's get you a modern computer with a modern processor and a new warranty, because you're using this to make money. I wouldn't go to a dentist that didn't want to buy new dental tools. I wouldn't want to go to a surgeon that's using old razors. And if somebody doesn't respect their business enough to once every 5 years replace their equipment when they're having a problem, right? Rather than taking the cheap way out, and I will do what the customer wants. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling the customer what to do. I'm advising the customer that if we put money into this 5-year-old computer, it's not going to be worth any more. You have no more warranty regardless. and your likelihood of experiencing another failure sooner is more likely the older the machine gets. And if this is a toy for you and you don't care, no problem. But if you can't work when this machine goes down and that creates stress and anxiety, let me know what a budget would be reasonable for you to replace this laptop. Now, the good news is the laptop's still usable. Take it home, keep it as a backup, right? Stick it in a drawer. If anything happens to the new one, you can take it back out, and even if it's slow, it's better than nothing. So that way, it sounds like they don't have a backup computer. So if they have one computer that they rely on for work, to make money, what happens, for example, when the Uber driver who uses their car to make money gets a flat tire? What happens? They just stop making money? I would hope that they have some kind of an insurance plan that'll come out and change their tire, or they keep a spare tire in the back. So these would be the excuses that I would say. And again, I'm not saying Mark did anything wrong. I would do it very differently. And I would tell the client, this is nature's way of telling you this machine needs to be replaced. We don't have to spend a lot of money. You're going to get a brighter screen, a sharper image, a faster processor, a new warranty, and you can have it tomorrow. We don't mess around with it trying to figure out why it's running slow. All that time investment, and well, let's see if more RAM works. But because the laptop still works, take it home, give it to the kids, keep it as a backup. You don't have to throw it away. But it's a much harder sell when I tell a client, look, your computers are 5, 6, 7 years old. We should replace them now before you have problems. You don't have to do it right now, but I want to plant that seed that when the time is right and you're ready, in the next, I don't know, 6 or 12 months, you plan for it, and then we don't have any office interruption, and then everything's brand new again, warranties are new again. All of the issues that will continue the older the machine gets, we're going to a big reset. It's all a business deduction anyway. It's a tax write-off. And it's a very different logic when you're using a computer to make money. Very different logic on how you take care of your car if you need your car for part of your job. If you're a DoorDash delivery driver, if you're an Uber driver, without your car, you don't make money. So you can be unemployed, or you can make sure you have a car under warranty and know that if something happens, you're covered. And otherwise, it's a double hit, because now if you're out of business, in other words, if you can't work, you're not making any money. And on top of that, you have to spend money to now replace the equipment. That's a 1-2 punch. Like that's a lot to take on. Much better to do it controlled, shop around, get the best price, have time, relax. It's not stressful. Migrate it over. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying the customer will agree with me, but I will definitely push that pretty hard to the customer that if you take your business seriously, I'm sure you have $500 you can find for a new laptop. Mark said, well, we had that discussion. She didn't want to replace the laptop yet. She's a remote assistant for several businesses and buys her own equipment. She knows she needs to start saving. Well, I'm glad you had the conversation so she knows what to expect. That's good. But whatever she spent for your time in that RAM, that could have been a down payment at Amazon or on the buy now, pay later stuff that they have available, where she could have had the laptop and just made monthly payments on it for $40 or $50 for like 3 or 4 months. If money's that tight. I mean, again, I'm not there, but I mean, I'm glad to hear that you covered it and you had that discussion. And at the end of the day, it's about providing the customers the information for the customer to make the decision that's right for them. And if their decisions result in consequences that end up costing them their career or creating more problems down the road, and they're just paying me more and more to keep coming out and fixing it, I guess that's good for my business, but they could have already paid for the laptop and been done with it Instead, they're choosing to nickel and dime or roll the dice, hoping they won't have to call me again, but I'm not working for them for free. So if they're okay with it, I'm okay with it. But I'm glad to hear that you did have the discussion. So we're not so far apart with that. Mark says, I also have clients who are architects, and they have very different discussions with them about their computers. They're also a lot quicker to replace computers before they get too old. Well, I mean, it just kind of tells you about the business owner. If the business owner doesn't want to put money into their own business, I want you to just think about this for a minute. How do their clients see their business as being valuable to their clients? If the person who owns the business doesn't consider their business valuable enough to invest in, then why should your customers? It's almost inevitable that it becomes subconsciously clear when you're lagging behind because your job is not a priority to you. And when your customers feel like they're not a priority to you because you can't be bothered to get better equipment, it becomes obvious. And what that's meaning is that you can either get the better equipment, or your customers are going to say, it's taking too long. Oh, the system's down, I can't help you today, kind of thing. Or, sorry, my system's slow, I need to wait a minute. Customers will have enough of that and say, for what I'm paying you, I could pay somebody else and not have these delays. You can only hide that for so long. So when the business owner themselves won't invest a modest amount of money every 5 or 6 years on the tools they need to do their job, that is likely not a business that's going to stay in business. That's normally the sign of a business that's getting ready to close. Somebody says, look, I'm going to retire soon. I'm not going to buy any new tools. I want to sell off the business, or I want to close it down, so I don't want to put any more money into it. That's what you just described. And that's okay, but trust me, customers pick up on that. And they'll try and jump off the ship if they realize that's a sinking ship they want off of it, especially when they're paying for the ride. And it's the business owner's decision to make, but they may not realize how obvious this is. It will be, if it isn't already, to their existing client base. And so if their goal is to shut the business down, they don't care. But if their goal is to stay in business and hopefully want to expand and grow, you got to expand and grow your tools. It's not expensive. Computers today are cheaper than ever. So anybody who says they can't afford a new laptop, we've shown several Nemo laptops here that even the baseline of which would probably be equal to or better than what she has now, but with a warranty and a new battery and a nicer screen. But it's their business, right? If they want to do that, it's allowed. I had a customer that I delivered new systems to. So your systems are getting really old, you know, you're going to need a newer system here. They've gotten a lot of years out of these. I don't think you can complain. Your average daily cost of ownership is into the dollars. Like, I don't know how much more life you can expect out of these, but you are running your business off of them. And if I were you, I wouldn't wait until they failed. But, you know, if you want new computers, let me know. And they said, yes, we'd like new computers. How many? 3. Great. Built and delivered 3 computers to them, and they paid me. A year later, they called me and said, hey, we're ready to install those new computers. I said, what new computers? They go, the computers you built for us. Last year? Yeah. Where are they? Well, you dropped them off, and you don't remember? Well, I remember dropping them off. Yeah, they're right where you left them. You haven't taken them out of the box? Yeah, I haven't had time. Not in the mood. You bought those computers last year. Those are the same. We're talking about those last year. Yeah. And now you want me to come out and set them up for you. Yeah. Okay. That was weird. So a customer calls me a few months ago, and I forgot all about this, you know. And they want to go from Windows 10 to Windows 11, and these computers will do that. And I said, oh, let me grab remote access, and we'll get Windows 11 on there for you. I can't remember what I sold them, so I go look on the system properties. It says it's an i9 9700K, 9900K. I go, didn't we just install these 3 years ago? He goes, yeah, but remember they sat for like a year and a half or whatever it was before we took them out of the box. Oh, because I'm like, these seem awfully old. But yeah, that's how it played with my head. I was like, we just set these up 3 years ago, but I sold them to you like, I don't know, whenever 9th gen, whenever that was. So they were already over a year. I don't know if it was a year or 2 years, but it was no less than 1 year that they just sat in a box. So by the time they deployed them, the 10th gen or 11th gen had been out. If they would have waited until they were actually ready to install them, they probably would have paid the same and got 10th gen or 11th gen. So when I looked at them, I was expecting 10 or 11th gen based on the number of years. So when I saw 9th gen, I was like, how was that possible? I didn't sell you up, you know, older equipment. Yeah, important to take notes. That was a weird one. And they gambled it, and that gamble paid off. They didn't have any system downtime. It's just, they just didn't really want to. They knew they had to, and they didn't want to. So finally, at some point, they came to terms with it, and they, okay, we'll do it. Very strange. Mark Leibowitz said, I've also been very pleased with the HP Omnibooks I've seen. Cool. He says they've been pricing the Omnibook line very aggressively. I haven't seen them, so I don't know. I'll take your word on it. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's show and the evidence that I presented to you. If anybody wants to, you know, as you watch other enthusiast content creators here on YouTube making sort of these weird claims, ask them to prove what they're saying. Just ask them to demonstrate it live on camera. If they're not willing to demonstrate it, there's probably a reason why. So choose to believe what you want to for whatever reasons you have. But do understand that a lot of information that's being conveyed online is obsolete information that no longer applies. And it's really up to each and every one of you to be your own filter and to identify trash from treasure here online, because there's a lot of great information. I mean, there's more bad information than great information, but the internet's so big, even if 1% of the information online is good, that's still a lot of information. But how you filter that from the noise and the crap and obsolescence, you have to do that. They don't have anything to do that for you. Maybe AI will get to that and start to filter this stuff out. But it's really, right now in 2026, it's up to us to do our own filtering and to identify real from fake. And one of the most inarguable ways to identify fact from fiction is to simply do it yourself. Before you believe it, do it yourself. See what your results are, because your results are real. What you're seeing online may or may not be. Okay? That's all I can advise you to do. If having the information accurate is important to you, but you can't be bothered to do the work to verify it, then I would suggest strongly that it would be irresponsible for you to mimic that information back out without any personal experience, because you may be just propagating a lie. And if you want to do that, freedom of speech is freedom to lie. I'm assuming you wouldn't want to mislead people, even if you didn't know better. But there's a way to know for sure. Super easy. If you guys have any questions for us, I'll throw the email address here up on the screen. Whoa, I wonder why that did that. Let's move that right about there. And yeah, showcasecreate@gmail.com. Let me hit the lock button on that so it won't move on me. And we love to hear from you guys. You have questions, tech support, you want to share an experience with us? We love that. You're never bothering us. We'd love to hear from you. Don't be shy. That's how you reach us. And again, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I love having you here. I cannot express my appreciation for the members who make these videos possible. Back in the day, advertising used to pay for it, and then some. But those days are gone, unless I want to make a deal with a company, and then they're going to tell me what I'm allowed to say and when to say it. And those aren't going to be my words. And that's not what I want to do for a living. I don't want to be a spokesman for somebody else. I want to be a spokesman for myself. And I like to keep it genuine, honest, and transparent. But it's hard to get anybody to say, we're going to pay you to do that. So it's for the viewers. And if the viewers want to see more of it, that's how it financially works out. So without our members specifically, this just wouldn't be what it is today, and we wouldn't be able to make anywhere near as much content. So I really deeply appreciate the friendships and the support, so that we're not just becoming a commercial for some company that wants to pay for it. Because again, that's not what I want to do. If we have any repairs or diagnostics, if you have something you want fixed and you want to send it in, email us. If there's a computer you're looking to buy, we might want to review it. And if you reach out to us and say, hey, I'm in the United States and I'm thinking of buying this mini PC, would it be possible for me to buy the mini PC, send it to us, let us review it, and we'll set it up with the optimizer, we'll get all the updates, we'll get it all done. We'll repackage it back in its original packaging. We'll pay for the postage back to you, and probably also take $100 off whatever the cost is, refunded right back to you. So you'll save money, we get the content, and you also get the computer all configured the Carey way. So when you get it, all you do is plug it in and start using it. You don't have to go through all the process. We're always open to ideas like that. Just reach out and let me know your idea, because that works out for everybody. You get to save some money. We get the content. Everybody's happy. So keep that in the back of your mind. If there's a potential opportunity there, we'd, you know, there's so many companies that we can reach out to and say, hey, would you send us something? Or, you know, we can go and buy products, of course, but at the end of the day, it's what are you using, right? So if we're reviewing something that you are actually using and you are actually interested in, then that content is more tailored to what your interests are. We know that for a fact because you were buying it. It's just a win-win-win all the way around. So the community, it works both ways, and what you give to the community is shared with the community. I'm not sticking it in my pocket. I don't know how sustainable this is, but so long as we have enough supporters, we're going to go until we can't anymore. And the fact that we've gone this long is much more than I ever expected. So thank you to all of our members in green and for supporting us here so we can continue our mission to do what I don't think anybody else on YouTube is doing. And that gives us a unique a content library that isn't matched, as far as I know, by anybody. There are other techs doing content and showing work, but not like it used to be. If anything now, they're fewer and fewer between. Many of them have gone away. We still have friends like Doug Betts over at Live Windows Training with Doug Betts. Of course, Mike's unboxing, reviews, and how-to. Ask Your Computer guy, Scott Merrill. cyber CPU tech. They're out there. But separate those away from the enthusiasts that have 1 million plus subscribers that are really all about the corporate sale. And there's nothing wrong with what they're doing. It's just, that's not being a computer tech. That's like being a game show host, which, two different jobs. That's all I'm saying. Don't confuse the two. All right. And with that, thanks to Mara, of course, for all of the work she does behind the scenes. The thumbnail creation, the video descriptions, and all the emails she filters through all those. She responds to most of them. If they require my attention, then she'll bring it to my attention. But otherwise, she's taking care of it, and that's why everything's happening so much faster. It's not all on me anymore. Taking off the administrative work, which is the part of this I hate the most. She loves that. So again, win-win. Everybody's happy. That's always what I'm looking for. I'm always looking for how can we both walk away feeling like we got value. Nobody took advantage of the other person. It was a reciprocal trade, bartering of equal. I'm going to give you something, you're going to give me something. It doesn't have to be exactly equal, as long as we feel good about it. That's all that matters. Man, if we can keep that up, something about me just loves that so much, versus we're just going to keep raising the prices and force people to pay. I'm not a fan of that. But that being said, that'll wrap it up for today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We're back tomorrow for our members-only videos. We do those every Monday, 1 o'clock Phoenix time. And for our members in green, we hope you will join us during tomorrow's video. Thank you again to our friend Buster, Mark Gaines, Paul Vircher, who gave Amazon gift cards today. That's very helpful because, again, we're spending a lot of money at Amazon. All this came from Amazon, which makes this all possible, which is, again, a very, very thoughtful and generous way to support us here so that we can share that with the community. It's what we're trying to do, and we can't do it by ourselves. Thank you again. We'll see you all. Well, we'll see the members tomorrow. And until then, bye for now.